Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello. We're back. Revisiting a video. Yeah, a video we've watched before, but I just want to start over and go through the whole thing. It's long. Done by Matthew North. There's a lot to dive into with that individual. Possibly R.I.P.
No, he's dead.
For sure?
Yeah.
Was it confirmed?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, they know a lot about him, but yeah, he ended up dead in his car.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so R.I.P. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of come back easy, at least easy for me, and just kind of like watch this with you guys, and then we can pause whenever, and I'm sure we'll have some shit to talk and stuff to add, and if anyone wants to add anything, feel free. I've been kind of diving into quite a few books that I would like to start sharing with you guys, and maybe, I don't know, do some sort of like book club or something. I don't know, but I'm going to save that for another show. But just to kind of give you guys an idea, there's 2 books that I'm focusing on right now that I think are super important and interesting. But one of them, you guys an idea, there's 2 books. Turn that down, boomer. Sorry. I couldn't help it. But one of the books is Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. Woo. And then the other book is The Primal Scream by Dr. Arthur Janov. But like I said, next show probably I'll want to go into it, and I'll post information about these 2 if any of you guys want to check it out, and like maybe like, yeah, we can discuss it. But I already have I don't know if I want to do a read through. I just want to go through the first chapter of maybe each book or just one. We'll see. But yeah, just to give you guys a preview. But let's just dive into this video. The video that got Matthew North killed. Maybe go if you want to revisit this is posted on Jeffrey's channel. Let's just get into it.
All right. So this is a presentation that I've wanted to do for about a year now. I'm glad I'm finally getting around to doing it. So yeah, let's just get into it. I wanted to start by mentioning some of Joe Rogan's sponsors. This is going to be the theme of this presentation, is the corporate and cultural agendas that Joe Rogan is involved in. Now, this is the type of information that's not fun to research yourself. It's just better if someone presents it. So that's what I'm going to be doing. If you haven't yet, check out the work of Jan Irvin. He's a vet. He's been doing this forever. He was involved with Joe Rogan early on. He's actually the guy who gave him DMT originally. And he was offered positions. So he understands how this works, and he's covered it very well. Also, Jesse Spots. I would like to recommend his playlist for the intellectual dark web. He does some great research. Please check that out. I'm going to touch on the intellectual dark web a little bit. This is the rising centrist movement we see in this country, right? Trump is a monkey wrench, a chaos agent for a new, brave new world, a centrist movement, a unifying movement. All right. So let's start with Rogan's sponsors. So Cash App is a big one. Jones mentioned that. Okay, the Jack Dorsey connection, and then everybody that followed. So this has been covered at nauseum, so I'm not going to really focus on Cash App and Dorsey, but there are some that people looked over. So like 23andMe, this is a big one, directly sponsoring Rogan's podcast. So 23andMe is co-founded and owned by Anne Wojcicki, the Jewess. Okay, Anne is the sister of Susan Wojcicki, the Jewess, who is the CEO of YouTube. I'm sure you're all familiar with her. And Anne was formerly married to Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google. Okay, so you should be aware of the 23andMe database system, the whole agenda with that. Rogan used to try to be slick with it, and he would just be like, "Oh yeah, you should do the 23andMe because they tell you all your health risks," and he would promote it. That's how his podcast works. Every other sentence in his podcast is a corporate plug or a cultural agenda or a corporate agenda. For example, he'll mention some pasta that he gets from Italy and acts like he just likes the product. No, he's getting paid to do that. That's how his podcast works. Okay, people need to understand that. And his influence is beyond anything we've ever seen. His podcast is so influential because of its base in Los Angeles, and then also it spreads everywhere else. So you can set the trends in Los Angeles, and they spread everywhere else. And that's exactly what we see going on with Rogan. He is by far the most crucial asset for the information age at this point in time. Okay, and then another person who sits on the board and is high level in 23andMe is Esther Dyson. Now, I want to highlight her because of her involvement in commercial and privatized space, which is a common theme we see running through these Rogan Jones type networks. Okay, so as of early 2007, Dyson describes herself as spending more and more time on the private aviation and commercial space startups. Also in healthcare and genetics. Dyson is a founding member of Space Angels Networks and is invested in XCOR, Constellation Services, Zero G, Icon Aircraft, Space Adventures, and Mars One. Now, Mars One is a well-known scam. And I want you to think about how long commercial and privatized space has been in the conversation, right? There's a news article for it, at least once a week that somebody's taking the step for commercial space. And for decades, we've seen this. Richard Branson, et cetera, Elon Musk. What do we see come out of it? Nothing, because it's a scam. Now, it would be easier for you to understand this if you understand the scam that NASA is. Now, if you're completely unaware of that or unfamiliar with that subject, email me, northmattheww@gmail.com, and I will send you proof and evidence that NASA is a scam, scamming $52 million a day from the laughingstock of the world, U.S. taxpayers. Okay, so that's a common theme, again, is commercial and privatized space that we see running through these networks. It's my contention that they're essentially funnels for that money to be funneled into other movements and other agendas, i.e., an information age asset like Joe Rogan. So let's move on to Elon Musk. Now, I believe, although Elon is not listed as a sponsor, he is a sponsor. And here's why I think that.
From Colorado.
But I did just get a Tesla. So I'm supporting the podcast.
Okay, did you hear that?
Oh.
Jeez.
Okay, he said, I did just
From Colorado.
But I did just get a Tesla. So I'm supporting the podcast.
I did just get a Tesla, so I'm supporting the podcast. How does that follow? Buying a Tesla supports Joe Rogan's podcast. Is Elon Musk subsidizing Rogan's podcast for an agenda, for propaganda purposes? Absolutely. Absolutely. And we saw this demonstrated with the securing funded, when Elon smoked the blunt, when he hit the backwood on Rogan's podcast. That was them manipulating stock prices. That was completely fake. And there were plenty of YouTube videos that I posted in my community section, articles, but they all got scrubbed because Rogan has that much access and influence. They all got scrubbed. So a lot of people don't understand that when Elon Musk tweets funding secure at 420, and then he gets up there and puffs on the blunt, that was them manipulating stock prices. Provably them manipulating stock prices. That's what was going on there. That was fake. Joe Rogan's podcast is the realest fake thing you'll ever see. It's very scripted. It's very corporatized. And there's an agenda behind almost everything he does on that podcast. But it seems organic. But it's not. It's not. He'll also do things like, oh, what's that square state? How do they end up with a perfectly square state, acting like he doesn't know what Wyoming is? He's been to Wyoming. He understands what Wyoming is. He knows what that state is. But he acts like he doesn't for that interaction with his audience. So his audience could be like, oh, it's Wyoming, Joe, you idiot. He understands that. That interaction that he's getting with his audience is getting them engaged. It's that sophisticated. It's that controlled. He's looking for that engagement. Okay. And that's kind of a point that Jones made when he was on the podcast last time, which is a point I've been making for over a year now. And I have emails to prove that. But also, Joe Rogan with Elon Musk, the Neuralink, which he's been promoting, right? The brain lace. This is an agenda that he was promoting long before Elon Musk came out with the Neuralink. Now we're seeing this all over now. We're seeing brain chips, all this idea promoted everywhere. Where did it start? Who was the cultural change agent that originally started pushing this out into the collective unconscious, if you will? Well, Joe did. So let's listen to this from a recent podcast, 2019.
That used to hang around.
I think the cure is mind reading. And I think we're going to accept that cure. Because, Elon is working on some sort of neural link thing.
It's the only way we'll know if someone's telling the truth.
We're going to have it. I think it's good. We're going to accept it, and we're going to give in. And we're going to we're going to be able to. I'll take it another step further. I think they're going to create a universal language. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think there's going to be a universal language that probably is augmented reality, some augmented reality language of shapes or
some kind of symbolism.
Symbols.
Something that we agree to. And we're probably not going to accept it because we're old. We're like, fuck this.
Next generation.
Our kids, maybe even our kids' kids. Our kids' kids are going to be the first people to adopt it. And then it's going to be universal worldwide. And with augmented reality and some sort of ability to interact with each other through bandwidth.
I remember through bandwidth. Okay, so it's going to happen. You notice that it's inevitable. No matter what, this is going to happen. You're going to accept it. So let's listen to this from 2014. How was Joe aware of this agenda years ago, 5+ years ago? How was he aware of this? Why was he promoting this idea? Because he's been working with these circles for a long time.
I think that one of the things that's coming out with technology is access to information, and access to information, not just current information, but maybe even future, like the ability to read minds, to read thoughts, to read.
Okay. So let's finish this up from the same podcast, finishing on that thought.
Technological symbiotic relationship takes place to the point where we essentially our memories, especially, right? They're pretty piss poor.
Right.
But if we can turn our memories into some digital archive that you can access at will, then we're going to know. I'm going to look in your head and I'm going to know what's going on. I'm going to be able to tap into it. We'll be connected the same way we're connected with Wi-Fi. The same way our cell phones are connected through the cellular network, there'll be some sort of a network of information exchange between all people. And if that's the case, deception will be almost impossible.
Right.
Motivations will be crystal clear. And you're going to know who's full of shit. It's going to be a fucking bad day for a lot of it.
Okay. So, again, promoting that agenda for a long time now. Let's move on here. Again, saying it's inevitable.
That was Elon's other thing that he said on the podcast. You're already a cyborg. You have a phone. It's not in your body, but it's something you're holding on to.
Yeah. It's voluntary cyborg.
Did you guys read Third Wave years ago? Was that a book you ever got into?
No.
That was the prediction of all this.
Really?
Yeah, and it's in the early 80s. And it was prediction. And the one thing Third Wave predicted was that.
Okay, so we have Third Wave mentioned there, which Jones also mentioned on his recent podcast. Now, that's very interesting to me, and this is a common theme in my life. That is something that I was researching long ago, and that I was going to include in this regardless, and other things. Let me pull this up here. Third Wave, information overload. Okay, future shock. Okay, now Alvin Toffler, the guy who wrote this, is involved with the Revolution and Military Affairs crew, the future Soviet warfare theory pushers within our own countries. Okay, the people that are involved in the New York, Moscow, Tel Aviv triangle. Those who have infiltrated the highest institutions in our country and have subverted them for the East's benefit, for Israel's benefit, and via the back door into the West, Israel, for Russia's benefit, for China's benefit. Okay, so I want you to look at the date here. This is from my notes on my other computer, June 7th, 2018. I have never heard this mentioned by any other researcher, anything. This is something I found my own on Wikipedia and included it into my research. Now, all of a sudden, recently, it's being mentioned on Joe Rogan's podcast. I find that very interesting. So Toffler coined the term future shock to refer to what happens to a society when a change happens too fast, which results in social confusion and normal decision-making process breaks down. He continued the theme in Third Wave, 1980, when he describes the first and second wave as agricultural industrial revolutions. The third wave, a phrase he coined, represents the current information computer-based revolution. Now remember, this was in 1980. He forecast the spread of the internet and email, interactive media, cable television, cloning, and other digital advancements. He claimed that one of the side effects of the digital age has been information overload, another term he has coined. Okay, so information overload or information apocalypse, as Steve Pieczenik referred to it in his novels, is what we're living through right now. So information overload, too much information, there has to be a solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Chaos, order out of chaos. That's exactly what we're seeing. And the solution for them is a brave new world. That is the agenda here. The centrist brave new world agenda. So let's move on to, well, okay, so it's the bigger plan. Let's do this. It's the bigger plan. Let's listen to what Jones has to say about the bigger plan.
Wow. Today, we're going to have Zach on, who's just a really smart guy and a great source, and really already tells me things that I already basically know from other sources, but he likes to come on the show, and we like to have him on the show. And he knows Elon Musk, and he knows Louis Farrakhan, a lot of other folks that behind the scenes have been reached out to and basically have been resonating with, especially if you talk about somebody like Elon Musk with the bigger plan. Now, what is the bigger plan?
That's a good question, Jones. What is the bigger plan? No, I'll finish up with Zach here once I move on to the next sponsor. Zach is friends with both Rogan and Jones, as well as Elon Musk and others. He's the one who set up the whole Kanye West situation. Let's listen to this clip real quick.
Yeah, I'm hoping that having him in office is that the whole thing was such a clusterfuck and that so many people are so disturbed that it's going to make people more politically active and more aware of the consequences of having someone like that in office.
Yeah, and actually, weirdly, unifying.
Yeah.
Because weirdly unifying. Chaos. Order out of chaos. I have clips of Jones as well saying that Trump was a monkey wrench thrown into the system to create chaos, because you can create order out of chaos. So unifying, a centrist unifying movement that gives you miracles, gives you new plant-based solutions, gives you new solutions to big pharma, gives you new solutions in technology. It sounds wonderful, but they're used as methods of control for further enslavement for a brave new world. That's why this needs to be highlighted, and the change agents involved in this agenda need to be highlighted and hammered on. Okay, so let's move on to the next sponsor here, which Jones made veiled threats at right here on it. Aubrey Marcus and Joe Rogan.
Really quick before he moves on to the next sponsor. So going back to 23andMe, wasn't there controversy recently? So since he made this video with 23andMe, was it, I know there was right, that the information was hacked, all the users' information, all the biometric data got out. And wasn't there some other shady business? So since this video has happened, since this video has happened, sponsor number 1 has already revealed itself to be even sketchier than we thought.
Now, when Jones was referencing DMT cults in Austin, he was referencing working with Pentagon and DARPA. He was referencing Onnit and who Onnit's associated with. Now, I knew the whole situation with Jones wasn't authentic from the beginning. I knew that threatening Onnit was a legitimately Jones putting pressure on Rogan, and having Jan Irving on was actually him putting pressure on Rogan. But I knew he would never go anywhere. He was doing it because he was pissed at him. He was doing it because of the Soros talking points. But as we'll get into here in a second, Joe was so deeply involved with Soros that, come on, Jones. So I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, is my point. I knew that these are overlapping networks, like a Venn diagram, overlapping, that this would not end up going anywhere. So let's get into Onnit here. So this is a Reddit post from 3 years ago. Whoever put this together did a good job of highlighting the shell companies that Aubrey's dad was involved in. So we're going to see mafia connections here, corporate connections here, and Pentagon connections here. Those are the big 3 that are operating these networks. So the true history of Onnit, originally founded by Aubrey Marcus's Texas oil man father, Michael Marcus, and originally formulated by Aubrey's stepmother, Janet Zand, an acupuncturist.
I just want to pause real quick. First of all, I didn't know until I watched this video that Aubrey Marcus had like rich parents or whatever. I thought he was just some hipster new age guy. And Braxton, if you want to add anything, feel free. I can always pause.
I got
Mike,
a quick comment. I just watched this. What is it? Drugs as Weapons Against Us. That one CIA documentary. Some really interesting stuff. It ties in all the basically how a lot of the mainstream musicians, it gets into Tupac and Biggie situation, stuff going all the way back to the Grateful Dead. It shows how all of those were kind of being manipulated for these sort of counterculture movements. So we're just pushing the narratives, because they talk about too how Tupac, he got put onto Death Row Records, and there were a bunch of police on the staff, I guess, working there. And so it was a sketchy little thing where he had to do a stint pretty much being on that label. And he was pushing drugs and violence and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting how subtle these little things can be.
Yeah, it's like that quote, the quote, every movement gets co-opted. It's like every subculture, everything, even if it starts out as maybe an organic idea or movement from the culture. It's funny just seeing things or seeing how all of these sons and daughters of ex-high-ranking military and alphabet agency people somehow become
Jim
these.
Morrison.
Yeah. The Laurel Canyon
Jim
music
Morrison's
artist from
dad
LA
was the guy who did the false flag that started the Vietnam War. He was the ship captain that did the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was a ship, just a U.S. ship, just claiming they got fired upon by the Japanese or something like that. That was his dad, and then they started the hippie movement to discredit conservative anti-war voters. You don't want to be a hippie,
exactly.
Stupid fucking
it colored
hippies,
the anti-war movement as dirty hippies, or just this specific type of subculture, and sort of excluded perhaps other people, greater population adopting these ideas or hearing these ideas. But that's a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah, when they took advantage of the angsty youth who didn't want to be, they wanted to rebel against their parents who were squares and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, yes. And like in psychedelics too. I mean, that's again, we've seen mind control programs that using these same substances, psychedelics, whatever, that on one hand could possibly really be used to help people and heal, whatever positive thing. It's like, okay, it can also be used as a tool for evil pretty much, or manipulation or what have you. Yeah
definitely. I was into that whole that MAPS, the psychedelic research thing. I was into that for a little bit until I found out the ties, and I was like, I'm gonna take a step back from that one. I was curious to see what kind of services they provide for helping people, and it's like, okay, no, that actually sounds more like mind control.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I used to follow MAPS as well, and I always remember being surprised, like, wow, this feels like it's going so mainstream. Like, how is it they're able to do this? That's so crazy. But then it's like, that's why,
Soros dollars.
Yeah.
Move mountains.
Yep.
Michael Marcus, father of Aubrey Marcus. Michael Marcus is a commodities trader who in less than 20 years reputed to have turned his initial 30,000 into 80 million. Notably missing from that Wikipedia page is how Michael Marcus made his millions in oil and gas. Aubrey Marcus's dad, Michael P. Marcus, named a business Coffee Exchange, Inc., which he later changed to Touchstone Resources. And then he again changed to Cygnus Oil and Gas, which owns working interests in approximately 13 oil and gas projects in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Alabama, and New Zealand. Okay, so are we seeing a common theme here? Are we smelling shell companies? Aubrey Marcus's dad, Michael P. Marcus, started another business named All American Burger, which he changed to BACC Communications, which he again changed to Sherney Energy. What is Sherney Energy? Sherney Energy is a billion-dollar oil company. Aubrey Marcus's dad started another business named Expressions Graphic Inc., which he again changed to Continental Southern Resources, which he again changed to Endeavor International Corporation, another oil company which ended up screwing investors out of their money. Scams for agendas. Wow. So Aubrey Marcus was a trust fund kid with millions of dollars from his dad, Michael Marcus's oil business to play around with. He's a non-entity, a mouthpiece, and would have been forever known as the guy who invented nail polish for men, which, by the way, he did, and he called it Alpha.
Nice.
That was the marketing there. So, and then the Fleshlight, that came from Onnit, Joe Rogan's co-founders of Onnit with Aubrey. Now, Onnit's huge with their connections, which we're going to get into here in a minute. The Fleshlight, there's a whole agenda with that. I'm not going to get into that, but that's his initial, hawking product on his podcast, just being a complete sellout, just all about the money, right? He acts like he actually cares about people. He acts like he actually cares about the world. No, he's all about money and his own personal interests. Okay, so let's move on to some interesting things about Aubrey here. So this is a good article to read. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitor Travis Nueza made bizarre accusations that Onnit CEO blocked him from EBI competition. Now, why did he block him? BJJ competitor Travis is claiming that the CEO and founder Aubrey Marcus pressured him for a sexual relationship. Travis claims that once he declined his pay for working at Onnit was drastically cut, and that Aubrey blocked him from competing at the Eddie Bravo Invitational. Now, Eddie's involved in this agenda as well. Eddie is propped up because he is so bad at explaining conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories, quote unquote, is so bad at it that it actually has the opposite effect.
He is really bad at it.
He's involved in all kinds of conspiracies himself. Okay, he's embedded in this network as well. Eddie Bravo knew about Elon Musk a long time ago, years ago. He also knew about Jones's relationship with Musk and the whole agenda that's unfolding here. Okay, Aubrey Marcus is a homosexual. I also have clips of, well, I don't have the clips, but I could go get them. Joe, I'm sure many of you know, recently Joe has been talking about how it is common knowledge that within the martial arts community, men are pressured to sleep with higher ups to get in positions. He's been saying that recently. Okay, that's absolutely true. Now, you're trying to tell me this man is not a homosexual. He's absolutely a homosexual. These guys are switch hitters. Now, he has a wife who looks like a man. There's probably a reason for that, but that's what's going on here. So let's get into Aubrey's bio a little bit.
Bros being bros.
Let me play these clips first, because this is, like I said, Jones could have buried on it simply. Jones could have buried Rogan simply with on it, but he chose not to. Why? Because he was always there. He was always involved. He always has known what's going on. So let's watch a couple of these clips here.
Oh yeah, look around.
Hey, Aubrey. Aubrey needs to hire Olivia over there at a high salary, or I'm going to hire her away.
You can't. I just brought her in for an interview. You can't take her in the first hour. No. Give me a chance.
On the bones of what?
No.
Bones?
No, you want to work here. This is cool. We can just carry on the stories over here. We're gonna be working together. It's almost happened a couple times already.
We're going to be working together. Now, Jones is obviously coked up in this podcast. Anytime you come around these on it connected, maps connected, people that are researching drugs for corporate and government agendas, they seem to have a steady supply that you could guess where it's coming from. Now, Jones has said he's going to be working with on it. That's interesting. Let's watch this one.
Want to hear some more? Here, listen to the voice from heavy metal. My evil extends across all time, all galaxies, all dimensions. A green jewel. Look into me one last time.
Strong. I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is.
Great.
Now we're having.
Darth Vader. That's still Darth Vader?
I am here to tell you the secret of the Lochnar is on it. It is the Alpha Brain. I've OD'd on Alpha Brain and found Valhalla. No need for ayahuasca. But the Nemesis Brain Force has arrived. A little plugging now.
Brain Force. Now, Jones actually modeled Brain Force after Alpha Power. It's the same formulation. It's the same product. Actually, and Jones's supplement structure is based off on it as well. He's doing a lot of the same things, where there's a lot of shady things going on in that aspect of it. So let's move on to this last clip here.
It's so crazy.
In fact, Shane Steiner.
Let me mention real fast that he mentioned the Lochnar. I kept it in there for a reason. Lochnar from Heavy Metal, that movie. It's actually very good. And it's an allegory. The Lochnar is Lucifer, the green light. And it's interesting to me that he associated on it with Lucifer. Just an interesting statement there.
You Bill Hicks.
Shane Steiner.
Are you Bill Hicks?
Yeah.
Where's Shane Steiner? Let's bring.
Now, I didn't want to include this part in here, but I had to get this clip. Every time Jones is around, people from on it, these corporate people, Hollywood people, comedians, they always call him Bill Hicks. Now he's going to call a guy named Shane Steiner in here.
Bring him in here. I went to freaking high school with this guy. We had Texas Monthly call me about a year ago.
How could you say some? How could you
Texas
say
Monthly called me about a year ago.
Right when Bill Hicks died.
And they said, and see, that's the crazy conspiracy.
Now, what Eddie's doing there, how could you say someone, and people believe it? He's saying that there's a reason that conspiracy has legs. If you understand how he works, he's saying there's a reason, and notice how uncomfortable these people get. There's a reason he's saying that. There's a reason the conspiracy has traction. There's a reason people believe it. There's a reason I believe that. Okay?
Theory doesn't mean you just make up whatever you want in like the world's fiction.
Does he look like him?
And Shane Steiner, I look nothing like him. And they say I'm 60 years old. Did Shane leave? Yeah.
He's diverting.
Hey, let's get Shane.
diverting.
This is a cool guy. This is the guy that got me in here because he told me I did
Oh,
promos.
look, the fight companion.
Shane,
grows.
they just asked me about.
Now, Shane is the person who got Jones in there. Now, Shane Steiner is a Hollywood guy, a musician, very well connected. And seems to be the only person that Jones went to high school with. And also looks a whole hell of a lot younger than Jones. But I want to highlight that point because Shane got him in there. Shane, according to Alex Jones, and I have the timestamp, I just have to go back to the GCN archives and get it since all of his YouTube records were scrubbed. But on 05/25, 2018, at around 1 hour and 21 minutes. Now, that's going to be different because of the commercial breaks from the live stream. Jones claimed that Shane Steiner comes from the Dixie Mafia. His family is Dixie Mafia. So again, Mafia, corporate, Pentagon. That's who's dictating these circles. So let's finish up with Aubrey's bio here. Aubrey Marcus is the founder and CEO of Onnit, a lifestyle brand based on holistic health philosophy he calls total human optimization. Onnit is an Inc. 500 company and an industry leader with products optimizing millions of lives, including many of the top professional athletes around the world. He regularly provides commentary to outlets like The Entrepreneur, Forbes, The Doctors, and the Joe Rogan Experience. If you ask Aubrey what cause he is most passionate about, it is raising awareness for psychedelic medicine, psychedelic medicine or plant-based medicine through organizations like MAPS and the Hefner Institute.
There
He's
it is.
a 20-year native of Austin where he currently resides. MAPS and the Hefner Institute. Now, before I move into MAPS and Hefner, I want to play this for you real quick and get you asking yourself a question here.
Hi, for Tim Kennedy. You know what I think?
I tried to take
I think
you
it's
down.
the drugs.
Oh fuck! Did we do drugs then?
Yeah, we did. We did DMT.
Was that the?
That was the next day,
that was
bro. That's
really?
why I was so emotional.
Wait. Are you sure?
Yeah, I went through it. I'm like, why was I crying like that?
That's
Dude,
interesting.
Hey, hold up. Could not stop crying.
So Brennan and I did
DMT.
We did a DMT trip. We didn't know.
What'd you say, Jim?
I said, I can't believe it.
By the way, what is he doing with his hand here? Why is this guy always rubbing on himself?
Oh, shut.
You guys did that.
Dude, we didn't even know.
DMT.
We
I
didn't
would
know
do it right now.
I would do it in a heartbeat. We didn't know it's what ayahuasca is. We didn't know what to expect. I'm into psychedelics now. I haven't done it, but I want to do acid next. Listen, if you're young and listening to this, don't. I'm 52.
No, DMT. On acid, I'm not.
I don't advocate drugs for anybody who's young. Okay, but if you're an adult, it's up to you. But
DMT was awesome.
DMT. So I'm not a drug guy, right? I never have.
One drug guys.
Never cocaine, not even weed, right? Not really a boozer. So
Love titties.
we find out we're gonna be invited. We're invited to this quote unquote ceremony by a shaman who will remain nameless. And Brennan and I
Aubrey Marcus.
Yeah,
what were you saying?
And Brennan and I look at each other. We're like, are we going to do this? I'm not going to.
So I don't want to bore you with the rest of that clip, but they go on to say they smoke DMT. Now, this is in America that they're doing this. How are these people getting away with giving people DMT in these cults and these self-help DMT cults? How are they getting away with doing this in America illegally? Ask yourself that question. It's illegal, but they can get on a podcast and talk about it and send people in that direction.
And like regardless of how can they get away with it like legally, but just like I don't know if you guys who are familiar with these characters like Brian Callen and Brendan Shaw, but like to just throw those two people into a DMT trip like as a friend, like
expecting it.
Yeah, or just like, or not to have some sort of like, yeah, like, man, you should go to like through some therapy or something. These are like two Hollywood douchebag like airheads. Yeah, and like if you're their friend and you're just like, yeah, you should just go into smoke some DMT at a DMT ceremony. Like that doesn't seem like a very friendly thing. Like that's just like, yeah, that seems
change your life.
Yes, or like
yeah,
it's been punched in the head 1,000 times. Like He's a ex-UFC guy. Like, it's probably not a good idea. What do you think, Hard Hat?
Well, I think I've never done DMT. I mean, I've done way too much acid in my early teens and then mushrooms, but I've never done the DMT. But I think you need to be prepared, especially for something like that. It's probably something that you should be wanting to do and kind of preparing and making, trying to get some information or worth while you're on it, instead of like when I was partying and that on my birthday, my buddies would they would dose me with E at the club and not tell me on my birthday, right? And you kind of go along. Well, no, it was part of we all, right? But I mean, for something like that, DMT and that, no, you need to be prepared and wanting to do it. And I think if you're thrown into that, I'm not sure, if that would be a positive outcome. I'll see what they say, I guess. But
Yeah.
Ari dosed Bert Kreischer.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
With what?
I want to finish up here. Let's. I guess I'll mention on the fake beef. Now, I started putting this together, and this was always going to be my opinion on it. Like I said, there was two things Jones did, threatening on it and having Jan on, that were legitimate. But clips like this always were ringing in my memory. People have said,
but Elon Musk is a patriot. Assange is a patriot. And I can tell you right now that Musk is a fan of yours. I could tell you the same way. Maybe you didn't know who I was back then, but Farrakhan was a fan of yours. The problem is Elon Musk has picked his side. He's in with DOD. But
today we're going to have Zach on, who's just really scenes have somebody like Elon Musk with the bigger plan. Now, what is the bigger plan? I mean, you told me you'll soon see Kanye at the White House. You said that.
By the way, Zach is the one who was behind the whole Kanye West situation. And I was the only one that took him seriously. That's how I was able to predict the Kanye West situation long before anybody else did, because I listened to what this guy had to say. Now, everybody thought he was too young. Everybody thought he wasn't anything, that he was just some kid, on a Navy ship somewhere calling in. No, this guy's involved. This guy has been involved with Cywar for a long time. Now he currently resides at Space Command, former CENTCOM. He was involved with the Fort Hood shooting. He worked with Voice of America as a victim Muslim. He also worked with CARE as a double agent. Okay.
Culture will speak, and you've not predicted. You know a lot of what's coming and what's going to be unfolding.
first of all, I've had some conversations out there in those hills out there in Calabasas with Joe Rogan. With Joe Rogan.
And Zach's a great source of really interesting information. And I know who he is, who his identity is, and some of the things he's done behind the scenes and things that have unfolded. And so he is who he says he is. He does do what he says he's doing. And I can confirm some of the stuff he's been up to out in Las Vegas and out in Florida and out in
come on,
L.A. as well. L.A. as well.
Okay, so he also knows Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, and Alex Jones. So we're having a military guy go in between these guys, and it's kind of dictating which directions they go in, possibly, or influencing them in some way or another. But that was something that was always in my head. These people can't really dislike each other, or they can dislike each other, but they can't really attack each other because they're involved in the same networks. They're Pentagon assets for the information age, as well as corporate assets. And then this is from The Fight. This is something that I don't think anybody picked up on. 99.9% of the listeners did not pick up on what he was saying here, but I did.
You're the bitch, and you get ready for it. That's how this works, Pilgrim.
That's how this works, Pilgrim. What does that mean? Pilgrim. Well, the Pilgrim Society is a British intelligence front. Now, remember, with the intelligence community, it's a giant spider web with Israel at the center of it. But the Pilgrim Society is something that all the early MK Ultra guys were involved in. You know, Halpern, all those people coming out of
Guess I've watched this.
the Pilgrim Society or associated with the Pilgrim Society, Alan Watts, all the MK Ultra people, all those cultural 60s change agents were coming out of there. Now, this is something where I think I would see an overlap with these two, because Jones is surrounded by British intelligence. You know, example, Ted Malloch, total MI6. But again, you would see this is like a Venn diagram, and you have these overlapping networks that they're both involved in. And then let's finish it off. This is also from the beef that was going on.
So just stop acting like you don't. We have a State of the Union coming up. Let's finish up this clip.
Or fill in the blank, whatever ridiculous conspiracy. The Rothschilds, the fucking Rockefellers, whatever it is. I'm not talking about that because the government threatened my family.
Sorry,
So just stop acting like you don't. We have a State of the Union coming up. Let's finish up this clip.
Or fill in the blank, whatever ridiculous conspiracy. The Rothschilds, the fucking Rockefellers, whatever it is. I'm not talking about that because the government threatened my family. That is fucking wrong. It's ridiculous. And now you put it out there. So
hey, pause again.
Hey, I have a question for Mr. Rogan here. Is it ridiculous because the Rockefellers fund maps, which fund you? Is it ridiculous for that reason? I mean, are the Rockefellers not real? Do they not have a track record of funding destructive, subversive movements within this country for their own benefit? Is that why it's ridiculous, Joe? So we'll get into maps here in a second and explain to you exactly what it is, but this is when when these maps people came around, Dennis McKenna, etc., when they came around.
Just want to pause for a second, respond to Nikki about Alan Watts. I think a lot of these people, I mean, I like this book that at the beginning of the show I mentioned, Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson, another character. They're kind of, a lot of these people are involved with, or come out of these organizations, Esalen Institute, Alphabet Agencies, whatever. I think they put out a lot of good content, and that's part of maybe if there is some sort of deception woven into their work, it's, you know, sugar makes the medicine go down, you know. I think there's you have to have discernment. But yeah, I don't know, maybe did you guys have any opinions on Alan Watts? He's a little surface level, like new age to me, so I've never been like a huge fan, but there's been definitely some things I've read from him that I've like, okay, it's pretty cool, but I'm not really super familiar with him. He's pretty mainstream these days now, though. I mean,
yeah, I was listening to some of his stuff a while back, and I mean, I didn't really come across anything that seems like too alarming or anything, but
yeah,
the only thing I would maybe think is like some of the stuff Mark Passio talks about with the new age deception, where it's kind of a front just to get people like doing the lotus position, you know, just like meditating and like not worrying about anything else in life, just kind of just like, no, none of that matters.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a stand down sort of thing.
It's like the fine art movement. That was a CIA op to get people interested in things that don't matter. Art.
Or abstract art, surrealist art, which may have, again, these could have been movements that organically formed, but then became co-opted in some way because they did have an appeal to
a certain
people,
political belief or something. Yeah. A certain agenda.
Yeah, there's usually always some kind of tie when things start to get popular like that. Like figures in the movement that are bigger, they end up, they have like a family member or some kind of like political ties from college or some kind of thing like that.
Or they just sell out and, you know, they want to have comfy lives and make lots of money, perhaps, you know.
Working for the government.
Yeah. Terrence McKenna, I know he goes into Terrence McKenna more in this video. Terrence McKenna is someone who I've followed a little bit more closely, and I think he's put out some really good stuff. Again, Robert Anton Wilson, who wrote this book that I'm reading, Prometheus Rising, his work is heavily influenced by Terrence McKenna. But again, yeah, I'm not sure. Alan Watts is Zen Buddhist. Yeah. Again, it's like these practices, it's not that it could be, are they trying to breed pacifists that'll never change anything? I don't know. I know personally a lot of people who practice different types of Buddhism, and that like it's helped them a lot, specifically, or even like just meditation in general. But then again, I've come across information where it's like, okay, meditation is sort of like puts you in a state of where like they've done brain scans of people who are able to, or very well practiced and enter deep meditative states. And it's similar to being on drugs, but then they've also measured these people who do it so often that they're kind of stuck in that state and they're not maybe as productive. So again, I don't know. It could be, a dosage type of thing or something that could be healing, but if done too much could lead us astray. But you have to have discernment.
And
I think go ahead.
With any person who's being used for an agenda, like they're not, like the powers that be can't expect to put someone out who just sucks, who's just saying the wrong shit all the time. They're not going to get attention. They give these people, these Elon Musks and these Stephen Hawkings and like all these guys, they give them, they say things that get you on their side. They're going to come with some stuff that you like. That's why you like them. And then once they got you locked in, when you least expect it, they throw something really sideways in there.
Or it's subtly sideways.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And it's maybe not something you notice, but is completely, essential for the agenda that they're pushing. So to be like, oh, I don't have any problem with Zen Buddhism, therefore Alan Watts is all good. It's kind of the wrong way of looking at it, because Alan Watts isn't, peak Zen Buddhist man. And I'm sure he has a lot of his own rhetoric and stuff mixed in. So you gotta just be wary of anyone, like anybody.
Just discerning to
it's like poisoning the waters of consciousness, so to speak, with like something that's gonna make people like complacent, like put them back to sleep when they were starting to wake up. Maybe it's like when you're
dealing with things like Buddhism, it's like a whole religion. So obviously people get fanatical about religion, and that's how you control people. You get them so caught up in something that like watch any of these cult documentaries. Like it's the same shit every time. Like it all starts with something all the people are really into, and then things go awry later on. It's like it's any situation, like with like all the you'll learn more in this in this video. But we just need to get to it.
Yeah. And just one more thing. I think this is part of something I've heard from Mark Passio, but I think a lot of these figures, it's sort of like a cul-de-sac before the gold mine, so to speak, to where it gets people going in the right direction, or a direction towards truth, let's say, and it's meant to sort of keep them just before reaching that truth, the gold mine, so to speak, to reaching the truth and the actual, meat of the matter, so to speak.
Yeah, you get blissed out. You get like you start to get into that stuff like Kundalini yoga, and so you like activate the DMT in your brain, and you get all like high and everything, and then it's like now you're like in this perfect, serene sort of state, and you have your gurus to go to for more guidance, and then you have to wonder, like, do the gurus have any sort of like political ideals or anything like that? So it's kind of weird. I think it just kind of takes the backbone out of people. Oddly enough, like it makes them to where they're spineless. They don't want to like actually have any impact on anything. And then there's that tricky line between being a martyr and being completely out of the game. Somewhere in the middle is where you should maybe be with that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting.
Round, Joe stopped front loading his podcast with ads. This is when he became ad free. So let's watch this real quick.
just press the music. Let's just go right with music.
Right. By the way, Jamie's struggling. I'm going to get into Jamie later, but Jamie seems to always struggle especially for a podcast at that level.
We have no commercials today. I like it.
Oh, that's great.
We're commercial free, ladies and gentlemen. We're brought to you by the universe.
Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very special episode. Podcast sponsorship free. Dennis McKenna and Josh Wickerham. Josh is from the Ethnobotanical Stewardship Council. You were one of the founders of this?
That's right.
Actually, really quick to respond to that, we found has anyone ever audited where the Spotify deal money came from? Didn't we just watch a really good video about that, sort of reviewing Joe Rogan's Spotify deal, and then he recently got back onto YouTube? There was like some deep dive.
What's that channel called?
Gosh, we'll have to find that video and maybe look into it. It's pretty interesting though. But
and how the
100 million.
His new deal is like completely different, and he's not allowed to watch YouTube on his show anymore because YouTube's mad at him for going to Spotify. Like, it's kind of weird.
Oh no, Spotify is I don't know. I forget what it is, but yeah, it's funny just seeing like it did a deep dive and you could just see the corporate, like the strings being pulled on kind of how directing how he runs everything and what he says. And yeah, he's just not Mr. open-minded guy.
No, he's in complete control. Like, he can't say anything.
He's got the conspiracies that are
He has to say allegedly all the time. He has to say allegedly all the time now. Whenever he says anything, he has to say allegedly.
Yeah.
Legally. And he can't use YouTube anymore. The show's probably over with.
Yeah, they've got him by the balls. That's not a good place to be.
And what exactly is that?
Okay, Maps Associate, podcast sponsor free, a very special episode. They're not sponsor free. Joe is surrounded by Maps. Joe promotes Maps, and Joe is funded by Maps. Okay, and Maps is corporate. Maps is a cultural change, a cultural shift, and there's an entire CIA MK Ultra agenda behind it. Now, if you don't understand the history of the cultural MK Ultra movements, please look into Jan Irving and his research. He's done such a wonderful job at laying it all out and getting all the evidence out there. That's what this is. Okay, so let's go back to these. Maps is Rockefeller funded. Rockefeller funded again for Maps website. The David Rockefeller family concludes to the obituary, encouraging people to honor Richard Rockefeller's memory by contributing nonprofit organizations, including Maps. Okay, Rockefellers. Backed by such private donors as, this is Hefner, which is it's synonymous with Maps, and published via Maps, where they were doing the ayahuasca, the DMT studies, the Rick Strausman, all the studies that Rogan references are Maps or Hefner studies. Okay. Backed by such private donors as Lawrence Rockefeller and Bob Walsh, and a Microsoft millionaire, which is Steve Wozniak. And this is easily provable by his association with things like Esalen, which we'll get into, and in the countercultural agenda. The Institute is financing clinical trials with LSD, psilocybin, and other hallucinogenics. Okay, and then they say to treat phobias, depression, excess, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's just to get funding. There's other reasons and other agendas for this. So let me just state right now for those of you who don't understand my position on this. I have no issue with people being able to own whatever substance they want, to being able to ingest whatever substance they want, especially when it's a plant or natural substance. I have no issue with that. People should be able to do that. Now, I start to have an issue with it when it's being used as a corporate tool, a tool of control, because that's what's going on here. I offer you plant-based medicines, alternatives, but it's a corporate tool. Now, there's more to that. So the value with working with the system, this is the founder of Maps, Mr. Doblin, coming from a Jewish family. Red flag. Now, again, this is another common thread, which, as to be expected, the Jewish influence in it, the Jewish ownership of it, the Jewish dictation of it. The corporate goal of maximizing profit for our shareholders. I just want to make sure this isn't okay. There he is, Dennis McKenna Wickerham, surrounded by MAPS people. Now, Jones is good buddies with Joe Rogan, right? Everything's all good, but he still absolutely hates Soros. Just like Trump says, leave Soros alone. Joe Rogan is working with people who work with Soros. But that's okay by Alex Jones. That's fine. We'll just ignore that. We'll just ignore that agenda there. So MAPS is co-sponsoring a conference in collaboration with the Drug Policy Alliance. The Drug Policy Alliance. Again, MAPS working with the Drug Policy Alliance. Joe Rogan having on Ethan Nettleman from the Drug Policy Alliance. So do you see how that works? MAPS, Rogan, the masses. Information or Pentagon asset for the information age. Corporate asset for the information age. The National Drug Policy Alliance. Nadelman founded the Center in Leighton Smith Center in 1994, a drug policy institute created with the philanthropical support, of George Soros. So it was created via George Soros's money. You think Jones would have an issue with that? He hammers on Soros all day. No issue. No issue with Joe. Nothing going on there, Joe. Joe is 100% authentic, according to Jones. Billionaire activists like Sean Parker and George Soros are fueling the campaign to legalize pot. Now, is that a bad thing for it to be legal? No, absolutely not. But here's the catch. There's absolutely a catch with it. And then also Peter Thiel, who's involved with the intellectual dark web in this agenda in general, is also investing in legalizing pot. Corporate weed.
Taxable.
Eric Weinstein, the guy who termed the intellectual dark web, managing director at Thiel Capital. Okay. Go again, see all these guys hang out. This is the intellectual dark web right here. This is the agenda they're pushing. Classic. Again, check out Jesse Spots for like the mental health stuff. He's done a great job of covering it. This is the example I would like to use. So this is why this is a catch with legalizing pot and with these corporate agendas. So I want you to understand how this works. Fears of marijuana monopoly in Ohio undercut support for legalization. Now, people were wise in Ohio to this. Most people would just vote it in without even, because, it's legal pot. It's good. Everybody agrees. There's a catch. And this is the catch. That's because it specifies that just 10 locations in the state where growing pot would be allowed, and a group of 10 investors have already have dibs on it. These are the same investors. These same investors are sinking $20 million into the campaign. Okay, if there's corporate support for something, red flag, first off. Secondly, this is the issue. They monopolize it. So they make it legal, but they own it and control it and use it as a tool of enslavement and control. So do you understand how that works? So, I mean, what this is a Brave New World caste system. So you have your alphas dictating to the people, you can't grow it, but I can. I control the supply. I control all of it. So I control what it is too. They can genetically modify it. They can do whatever with it. They control it. So this is literally the caste system that we're seeing instated here. Now, the Brave New World caste system is literally the social systems theory that came out of the BACC conference, which is Jewish. You guessed it, Jewish. And was the social systems theory is heavily promoted via the Esalen Institute, which Joe Rogan takes trips to. We'll get into the Esalen Institute here in a little bit after I finish up with MAPS. But I just want to mention this so you have a kind of an understanding of the corporate agenda and the corporate control, as well as the cultural control going on here. Social systems is literally the Brave New World cast. So you have all your sellouts and all these people dictating over the other groups, and everybody has their determined system in society. Universal basic income, the whole deal. Literally a Brave New World. Oh, and look, the presidential candidate that supports universal basic income. And Joe Rogan on his podcast
Yang gang.
blows it out to all the masses. This is what you guys need. This is what you guys want. This is the good for society. This is the direction we're going. It's inevitable. And he really has that much influence that people buy into it. Absolutely. Again, running for president. Now, where did this universal basic income idea originally come from? Well, people like Alan Watts, who was a CIA asset, via the Esalen Institute. Here he is at Esalen promoting this idea. Now, the Esalen is essentially Bohemian Grove for the 21st century. For those of you who aren't aware, Bohemian Grove, but they also study like thought architecture, how to manipulate your subconscious. And we'll get into some of that later as well. For example, I have this book. This is some studies that come out of Esalen. The real interesting ones are unpublished. The physical and psychological effects of meditation. So they're studying how the subconscious mind works. They're studying on the people. Now, the Silicon Valley people who go there, you know, the top people, they don't get studied on, but they go there as like a retreat, as it's Bohemian Grove essentially. So you have all these high-level Silicon Valley people going to Esalen Institute, where all these ideas are coming out of as well, but they also create agendas there. So, for example, the Manhattan Project came out of Bohemian Grove, originated at Bohemian Grove, and then ultimately was implemented. Same thing is going on in Esalen. It's just think of it in terms of Bohemian Grove for the 21st century.
Also in NorCal, just on the coast.
So again, you have someone like Timothy Leary or Richard Alpert, who from Harvard, you know, who became Ram Dass. And what they would do, you know, they would go to places like Esalen. And then this circle created a following of thousands of LSD veterans who were then deployed to proselytize for drugs for the masters, the secret masters agenda, the corporate and cultural agenda. That's what they're doing here. Okay? So it's kind of a similar concept with like Rogan and all of the Comedy Store clique. You know, Daddy Rogan, and everybody just grabs their ankles for Daddy Rogan because they're just riding that wave. They'll do anything for Joe. They'll get themselves involved in all kinds of illegal things, do everything for him because they're indebted to him. So it's just a similar concept here. Okay, so let's give you guys kind of a MAPS intro so you understand that the Rockefellers were funding it. There's a whole agenda going on there. And there still is. And we're living in it, and we're seeing the rise of it. So I want to read this for you guys. CIA MAPS after embalming the dead. In the new millennium, the New York Times, the Baltimore Sun, and other the Baltimore Sun and other large circulation daily newspaper highlighted research on psychedelics and ecstasy. Doctors at prestigious university medical schools produce studies promoting positive aspects of these drugs. These studies are often mentioned in an affiliated funding source, research group, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies Incorporated, which is MAPS. Founded in 1986, MAPS received early aid from MK Ultra participants such as Timothy Leary, who also worshipped Crowley, which is Jewish mysticism, or worshipped his promoted Crowleyanism. The former CIA contracted inventor of LSD, Albert Hoffman, also donated to the funding of MAPS. The year before, the Food and Drug Administration had classified ecstasy as a Schedule I drug. This made ecstasy illegal an addictive substance without clinical value. Rick Doblin, who is Jewish, founded MAPS. Doblin described his first acid trip, which reportedly led him to say he had been fortunate to be able to combine psychedelics with the pursuit of the American dream. The Reagan and Bush administration's IRS granted a 5013 tax-exempt charity status to Doblin's North Carolina-based MAPS. MAPS received large contributions from billionaires like George Soros. Okay, so anything Soros is involved in, is it going to be good? Even if it sounds good on the surface, like legalizing pot or anything like that, it sounds good on the surface, but there's always a catch to it. It's going to be used as a method of control and further enslavement. The multi-billionaire Prasker family and anonymous British Foundation. In the new millennium, MAPS listed major contributions of families and groups, including Prasker family, who had a net worth of tens of billions of dollars. Okay, so let's continue reading here. The relatively short article devoted about 2 paragraphs to MAPS founder Doblin. MAPS start during the Reagan-Bush presidential administration seemed no coincidence. In 1986, Vice President George H.W. Bush's aide, Oliver North, jump-started the Iran-Contra scandal involving the CIA in trafficking cocaine, which is a CIA CNP operation. Once the former CIA director Bush reached the presidency, he appointed Dr. David Kessler as Food and Drug Administration Commissioner, harkening back to the MKUltra days of testing LSD in schools. Kessler approved university testing of psychedelics again in 1990, just after the U.S. Senate confirmation. Now we see Trump doing this right now, allowing these psychedelic plant-based medicines to be tested and approved. The approval marked the FDA's first psychedelics research in over 20 years. Dr. Kessler remained FDA commissioner for the next 5 years, including 3 years under President Clinton. President Bush also had Kessler fill FDA with like-minded research staff favorable to psychedelics. Why? Because there's an agenda. Not that they're necessarily bad or there's no uses to them. There's an agenda. That's what I'm highlighting here. In an interview, Rick Doblin said one of those leading doctors in the FDA was Dr. John Harder, whose vision, quote, vision was to train me, this is key, vision was to train me to understand how the FDA worked so that I could try to mobilize the demoralized psychedelic community to submit protocols. Doblin went to describe the history of his work, which inadvertently revealed his unusual power in the FDA. Even after Kessler's resignation under President Clinton, quote, there was a short period after he resigned in 1995 during which lower-level FDA officials made it difficult to move forward with psychedelic and medical marijuana research. However, I filed a complaint with the Ombudsman, and the policies established by the pilot drug were reaffirmed in 1999 by FDA upper management. Doblin further said Clinton's successor, President George W. Bush, also picked an FDA commissioner, Dr. Jane Henney, who is supportive of psychedelic research. From 2000 to 2011, MAPS articles showed up in newspapers worldwide. With MAPS funding of Harvard and Johns Hopkins research, the idea of LSD and ecstasy having health benefits spread. The New York Times, Baltimore Sun, and other newspapers helped spread MAPS propaganda, further legitimizing the group. The strongest evidence, so CIA, MKUltra's 50 years of involvement. The strongest evidence of CIA continuing MKUltra was revealed in the November 2000 arrest of 55-year-old William Leonard Picard, deputy director of UCLA's Drug Policy Research Program, for running one of the nation's largest LSD laboratories. Drug enforcement agents would also eventually implicate Professor John Halpern and other psychedelic think tanks. The Hefner Research Institute, which had worked on many projects with MAPS, the DEA arrested Picard at the laboratory site, a decommissioned missile silo, which they actually weren't at that point. This is an interesting case. They were set up by a DEA double agent, Gordon Todd Skinner, and they weren't arrested at the site. They were leaving the site. They were packing it up and leaving. They never actually produced LSD there because they thought they were being set up. DEA agents had enough raw materials there to make over 15 million hits of acid.
Whoa.
Comprehensive articles in the Rolling Stone and San Francisco Chronicle cite evidence suggesting that Halpern, Picard, and others were involved in continuing this MK Ultra operation. This operation has links to the original MK Ultra LSD laboratories and universities involved in MK Ultra, top government officials, and LSD promoting think tanks. Okay, so an interesting MAPS connection. I wanted to finish with that drug trafficking story, that manufacturing of LSD story, because I believe there's a lot of that going on right now. As I said before, ask yourself, how are they able to give DMT out to people, just like the Grateful Dead used to give out LSD to people, illegally in this country with no issues? Because they're involved in higher level operations. They're involved in research programs, in MK Ultra style research programs. So we have, again, Halpern was mentioned, who works with MAPS to this day, continues to work, or up until recently at least, with MAPS, and he was involved in illegally producing and selling drugs. Okay, so someone associated with MAPS was involved in the illegal drug trade. Put two and two together, that's exactly what's going on. We have these government-sanctioned and corporate-sanctioned research programs that are also involved in the illegal drug trade. Now, I want to play this. This is from my channel. I posted it a couple weeks ago.
Really quick. Do you guys remember that Vice special about, I think her name was Crystal, but that like stripper from like
the
back
caves,
east?
the rave caves.
Yeah. And so she basically, long story short, she like ended up, she was a stripper and started dating this guy who was this
DJ or promoter or something.
Well, no, he manufactured LSD and had these underground bases. I think they were old military bases, and it was this rich guy. And so basically what happened was she was like, ended up getting abused and whatever, and ran away and went to the authorities, and they basically called him and was like, yo, then we're like, yo, your girl's going crazy, like talking shit. Go get. So he was an informant basically, but it was this total, it was like a guy. Yeah, I think her name was Crystal, but yeah, but it was a total expose. But it was just like, it sounded like one of these dudes though. But you remember that, right? Yeah. Just like, how common is that to where it's just like these people who are in MAPS and they're like, you look into their history, they're like, oh, they're just like this crazy drug dealer, but like, how are they able to get away with it? And now they have this position of power. Like, it's just the corrupt deep, like,
yeah, like the universities, because I've heard about that with like Terrence McKenna and a few others, and they're talking about like the whole psychedelic revolution when like acid was first coming out. It's like abandoned missile silos. How do you come across that? You know, you got to know somebody who has
that.
What's that?
How do you acquire them and then get away with producing LSD for a decade? Like,
yeah, you got to have some pretty serious ties to be able to pull something like that off.
Exactly, yeah. And then you never know, you may be the head of a board of, you know, of MAPS someday.
Keep working up that ladder.
I think let's give this clip a listen here. I'm just going to speed it up a little bit. So this is from 2017. So 2 years ago, I was talking about a comedy club, The Laugh Stop, where I suspected that they were selling drugs and then laundering it back through their club there, or possibly this money is being donated back to MAPS for further research and further growth of this agenda. So selling illegal drugs and the money makes it back to the legalization process, etc. But this is interesting. Identify a little place in Austin, other cities in Texas, and will sell you drugs, and then they'll launder that money right back through their little club there. But that's a different show or video. So money laundering is a good thing to look out for. Now remember, this was never referenced. Nobody ever referenced this prior to me stating this. Then after I stated this, this Comedy Store clique began to reference the Laugh Stop. And
it's great.
Oh my
Houston,
God.
Houston's great. Austin's great. Texas is the shit.
Houston, I did an album in Houston.
Austin, did you do it at the Laugh Stop in River Oaks?
Oh,
Yes.
what a club that was.
Yeah, I did an album.
Is it there no more?
No, it's not.
That was well. That was
Apparently the
Bill
building
Hicks's
is still
club.
there. Yeah.
What is it now?
They
The old
use it
PCD?
sometimes. Like they'll have shows there sometimes. I think someone had something there for a while. I don't know the full story, but that was one of the greatest clubs ever. Laugh Stop in River Oaks. Remember that crazy dude was running it? The fuck's his name?
Yeah.
Fuck's his name? Bald guy.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That
He had
was
an
mine.
Italian last name.
I forget.
Oddly enough.
Joey knew him real well.
I forgot about that dude.
Yeah.
Yes, and that was Bill Hicks.
Yeah. Place. They had a fucking legit open.
My boy Mark, we had a good time. I love it there. Cap Cities.
Oh, I love.
I remember one day there was a guy, you asked him about drug dealers, Lee. Let me tell you how wide open it is. Again, sorry to talk about this city, one of my favorite cities in the country, Hollywood. Houston, Texas, had a kid that would come to your shows, Lee, and he would give you a bud, and you'd go, wow, this is Houston. Where did you get this from? He goes, this is what I grow. And he'd go, I got 6 other strains. You want to buy something? You're like, yeah. You'd go out to his car, Lee, and he had one of those construction trucks with the panels and shit. And I wish I was lying to you, Lee. I wish I was lying to you. He would open up the panels, and he'd have little jars of weed. This is fucking 12 years ago. The Laugh Stop was still open.
Yeah.
This was at the Laugh Stop when Rogan was headlining. Those things that you see of that fucking
Did you hear that? This is key right here.
Yeah.
This was at the Laugh Stop when Rogan was headlining. Those things that you see of
Pete. Let's listen.
Laugh Stop was still open.
Yeah.
This was at the Laugh Stop when Rogan was headlining. Those things that you see of that
Pete. Now, who he's referencing there is Pete Pirelli, who was the manager of the Laugh Stop during that time, the Houston Laugh Stop during that time when it was open. So you have, I believe his name's Felipe, who has the lowest IQ I've probably ever seen in my entire life. Actually naming the guy who was supplying drugs to these comedians while Joe Rogan was headlining. Was Joe Rogan getting a percentage of this? Was there some sort of deal worked out here? Is Joe Rogan involved in drug dealing?
No, man.
These are questions you need to be asking yourself. Now, Pete Pirelli, you can look up his LinkedIn page. You know, he lists the Laugh Stop there. The documents from the Laugh Stop list Pete as the manager, Pete Pirelli. And he's got a nice social networking job now, which is interesting given where Rogan's gone with his career. And I think maybe you should give Pete a call and ask him what was going on. You know, his number's listed there. Go ahead and ask him what was going on at the Laugh Stop during that time period.
that fucking video that you see of Redman texting me and me going off on him in 2003, that was then. That was then. This guy would show up to the shows, and he would have these weed containers. And then part of the conversation, he'd go, hold on. And it was like you were in that scene in Taxi Driver. I got fucking pills. And you're like, wait a second, what do you got? The one time he came to a show, he had Coke, Vicodin, Valium, Xanax, some tranquilizer you gave to retarded kids when they went over the top.
PCP.
He had something else. He had 20 different fucking things in there.
It must have been your favorite.
I used to give him $200, bro, and he would give me a to-go package that would fucking make a mule sing. He would give me like a half 8-ball, fucking 20 Vicodins, 20 Xanax.
You have a variety pack.
Oh my God, he'd give me fucking animal tranquilizers. You have no idea.
Ketamine?
Okay, so that's key there. These guys are involved in the illegal drug trade. So let's think here. The illegal drug trade and then this whole MAPS studying of the drugs, these are interlaced. If you continue to look, you will continue to find an interlacing between the illegal drug trade and the so-called legal drug trade. Now, I want to play this clip again. Oops. Okay. Let's watch this real quick.
He's doing all this from Windows 7.
Well, let's do this one first real quick.
Hell
You'd
yeah.
be surprised.
Yeah?
The ESC has sent out a call for experts, and we've been infiltrated by the mainstream people that do evaluation work for the World Bank and USAID. They're interested in ayahuasca. People are going down to South America to have these transformative experiences, to sit in ceremony. There's a lot of underground activity in the US as well, and Europe, where it's it's not legal. But in South America and Peru, ayahuasca is protected as national patrimony.
That's awesome.
Okay, first thing that he mentioned, the high-level people associated with these modern Eleusinian mysteries, as Bruce Damer calls them. These are the modern initiations. So you have these high-level people, and then he says underground activity. Yet, Brendan Schaub and Brian Callen can talk about how they illegally smoked DMT, name who gave it to them, name where they did it at in Texas, but it's okay. They can legally get away with it somehow. It's illegal, but it's fine. They can talk about it openly to hundreds of thousands of people, but it's okay for them to do it. Why is that? Let's watch this clip real quick.
It's when I get kind of...
You want to make up your mind? I got something right here for you.
What is that?
That's where the mushrooms are.
I know. That's exactly what they're for.
Come on, bro. Let's make up your mind.
How about Joe? If I can you imagine if I took these and did your show before?
Just take a little one like this.
No, fuck that.
Nobody's got to get hurt. Just a little one.
Jamie, would you do that?
Just a little one.
I don't want to be giggling in the car on the way
It'll
down,
be fine.
throwing up on myself.
It'll be fine.
What's it do? What's going to happen?
We'll
I
find
want to
out.
get out of here before it takes effect.
Yeah.
Guy's going to get me in a fucking some type of scissors.
It should be legal. It's supposed to be
I
legal
believe
everywhere.
that. It would make people mellow the fuck out, right?
It would.
Open that third eye, man.
It would do something really good for people. The problem is you forget you take it sometimes. Like an hour and a half later, like, why am I so weak? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't want to be that far in my own head. That's scary.
Have you ever done the float tank?
No.
You want to do that? Well, you can't. You
I
don't have enough
can't.
time.
I got to float the fuck.
Okay, so again, takes an illegal drug. Now, this is just, again, pushing an agenda because they're doing the same process that they're doing with marijuana, legalizing that with psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms. They're doing the same thing. They're pushing to legalizing that. So he's normalizing it by taking an illegal substance on his widespread podcast, massive podcast. He's allowed to take an illegal substance and there's no repercussions for it.
And again, like nothing wrong with that, but it's like even that right there, that clip of him eating the mushroom, it was like an ad. Like it was like Truman Show,
Well,
like
also,
shit. Like
Mike Redbar's covered this, but Joe, his tradition after his show with almost all his guests that can do it is to go out to dinner with them after. And like these shows, he's getting wasted. Like he's getting drunk as shit. He's eating mushrooms. He's smoking weed, smoking cigars on camera. And then he goes and drives.
Yeah.
Like to have the balls to just do all this shit.
And
I mean,
no
yeah,
drunk
he's
driving,
rich,
yeah.
but like he's obviously in the club. Like, he doesn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
You'll never see Joe Rogan in any legal problems ever.
as
Never
far
has
as like
been, never will be.
legal trouble for
any
doing
kind of-
drugs on the show or something.
anything.
Or like, yeah.
He's probably got like the best money.
He'll be clean his entire career because he's the chosen one. Like he's the guy right now.
He's the
He's
one.
got everyone by the balls.
Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, I remember that the little compilation that Red Bar did where it was like the Mike David did the did Joe Rogan get like a DUI or something like that? He's just like casually just going around just like smoking weed where it's still illegal down in Texas and like driving around drunk like you're saying. He's just like loose cannon behavior for somebody who like has the eye of the entire world on him.
Right.
He just does not care. He's just being reckless.
Yeah. Just very confident. I love that. Take some ayahuasca, my float tank, bro. It'll loosen you up for the podcast.
It's just some casual thing.
Yeah, you'll feel like really like you'll want to have a conversation on camera, broadcasted to hundreds of thousands of people. Like after
It's almost
doing
like
that.
blackmail. Like it's weird.
Yeah. I mean, and I've heard like, I used to be curious about ayahuasca because I heard about like how it could, it had all these benefits and everything like that, like psychologically. But then after a while, like the more I started hearing about it, it's like people are talking about seeing these crazy interdimensional demons and stuff. And like there's these crazy birds that fly around and they'll like tell you that they're gonna end the world or something like that. Like I think Terrence McKenna was talking about that. He's like, some shaman. He was like, oh yeah, they do that. Don't worry about them. It's like,
oh, don't worry about the crazy evil jesters, evil looking jesters. Well, the scary thing is that there's people see the same entities too. So that's even, not to say if it's positive or negative, but
that just makes you wonder, because it's like, what are you getting like thrusted into without your knowledge, especially without casually, you're talking about that earlier, just casually just taking some ayahuasca.
Yeah, because your friend's like, your bro friend is like, dude, do it. Don't be a pussy. Like, it's not a good environment.
That's not like smoking your first joint or something. That's pretty up there.
And I've heard them talk about DMT vapes on that show a lot. Like they're always, all that crew's always talking about DMT vapes, which is like, wow, you're just gonna walk around and do DMT all day?
Just become narcoleptic, just pass out in the middle of a conversation.
Like you're almost asking for like the DMT jesters, like the interdimensional like clowns to like fuck with you, because you're like, okay, you're gonna get here via inhaling a vape. Like you're gonna have to pay some consequences for doing it in that, like, I don't know, like easy of a method or something.
Yeah, like if there are real entities involved in that, then that probably looks pretty disrespectful compared to the people who had to go through the whole ceremony, void their bowels and whatnot.
Show some respect perhaps to the process. But yeah, again, like I speaking for myself and what this gentleman, what Matthew said, there, I don't think plant medicine's bad. Again, it's like these are tools perhaps, or methods to access certain things, but it can be used for good and bad, so to speak.
Yeah, because there's a dark side of shamanism too, where there's like people, even like cultures down in South America, I've heard, like they take advantage of people who don't know any better and like hypnotize people. What's that?
Bear Cooper.
Oh yeah, like you're talking about that too. He just like kind of puts himself in that culture too, and he is one of those dark shamans, it sounds like. I mean, it's crazy because that's pretty much what MAPS is. The optics, I guess that's what it's looking like they're getting into. Like it looks good and everything. It looks like it's going to help people for the better, but you have no idea what you're getting into, and you just have to hope that these people have your, best interests at heart.
Yeah, or what are the studies being used to develop? What are they, is it being used to develop better, more effective methods of mind control and manipulating people? I mean, I think that's where plant medicine can be used as a tool for bad, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just
double-edged sword.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it should be taken lightly. I surely would not take DMT or ayahuasca lightly in that, in that sort of setting or whatever.
I'd probably want to do a year straight of research now, like after just the things that I heard, like before jumping into something like that, if even I did. So it's pretty crazy. I've known a couple people who have gotten kind of blown out from it. Like they had their third eye activated a little too much and they're not quite the same. And that's a little,
same. Like it's,
Oh,
I've seen it. Yeah.
I'd rather not permanently alter my state of consciousness like that.
Yeah, exactly. Shoot, I had one more thing I wanted to say, but I totally forgot. Oh well, maybe it'll come back.
Ask yourself, why is that? How is he able to get away with that? Well, he's pushing the agenda. He's normalizing it. It's just something people do. Everybody does. It's fine. And the thing they're doing with the magic mushrooms is exactly the same that they're doing with illegal pot, where there's a corporate control over the substance. It's dictated by corporations. It's dictated by the alphas in the caste system, where they control everything about it. So again, like I said, and I'm not someone who hasn't tried these substances. I've done pretty much all of them. Okay. But like I said, it should be legal. In my opinion, it should be absolutely legal. It should be truly free and undictated by a corporation. It should not be dictated by a corporation. You should be able to grow it yourself. You should be able to do it all yourself. It also shouldn't be pushed on people. The agenda of pushing it on people is a cultural agenda for a specific reason. Secondly, it's a method of control.
That just reminded me. I've kind of heard it described. It's a little cheesy, but it's like, oh, the medicine will find you. It's like the only people who should be experimenting and taking a lot of these really intense plant medicines should be brought to it themselves by their own research and wanting to get into it, not your friend pushing it on you, or society or corporations. Surely.
Yeah,
like,
there's
I think
also...
that.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, there's also that thing with the whole ayahuasca culture. Like this actually kind of favors veganism too, because there's that whole thing of the dieta, like the diet that you're supposed to eat before you like go into it.
Yeah.
And usually it's like you want to eat light foods. You abstain from alcohol and tobacco, but you're eating like plant foods pretty much.
Plants. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to go into it with like that dark, heavy matter that's going to like possibly mess with your trip. Because I've had some experiences with weed where I was eating a more like, really unhealthy diet because I wasn't vegan when I first started smoking weed. And like I had a couple of weird experiences where one time I was eating ham, like sliced ham and like lunch meat. And like I just had this thought click in my head. I was like, is this what it's like to eat human? It was like an early sort of like weird, what do you call that? Like foreshadowing, I guess. Like I connected those dots, but like kind of thanks to weed, but that was a weird,
No, that was like, like some part of your brain making the connection, and like because you were under the influence, so you couldn't suppress it, and it was just like shouting out like, ooh, like that's flesh. Ew.
Yeah, too close
oh
to
my
home.
God. Yeah. That's wild. No, I remember being younger and like even just different parts of my life over the decades, like weed has affected me very differently. I remember, I think there was a period of time where, I was eating like crap, definitely eating meat. And I would get very paranoid and get like, I would get so paranoid, it would almost make me sick. And it was so weird where I would just think like, oh, like I thought I couldn't smoke weed for a while because it just had that effect on me. But now that I think about it, it's like, it's almost like maybe it's something to do with that.
I've been paranoid since I've been vegan smoking weed.
Yeah.
I used to not be able to smoke indicas. Now I can smoke indicas.
Yeah. No, when we first started hanging out, you were like sativas only. I'm like, what? No.
That's what I want to do. Yeah, it's weird too, because one of the experiences that kind of like led up to me not being able to smoke weed so much was it was actually while I was still eating animal products. I was eating basically I was having biscuits and gravy one night, and I had there were these red velvet cookies too that like it was just a bunch of rich, like really heavy, like not great for your stomach kind of foods.
Yeah.
And and I don't know what it was, but like I smoked a little bit and it just hit me like way differently. It was like almost like psychedelic bad experience. Whoa. And like it's a weird story that I'm still kind of trying to unpack because there was some strange kind of symbolism. Like it was a full on like visual experience.
What?
Yeah, I remember that like the thing that stood out that really like kind of it rubbed me the wrong way, like made me have to kind of take a step back, was there was like this dog that was talking like in this whole like hallucination I was going through.
No way.
For some reason, when the dog was talking, like it was telling me
what
that
kind
like,
of dog?
It was just like a regular like
a mutt?
Almost like a greyhound or something. Kind of like I remember like kind of the silhouette, but like like it talking for some reason just like gave me this like impending doom feeling. Like that's the only way I could explain it. Yeah, from weed and like heavy foods, I guess.
That's crazy.
And so, sorry, were you like looking at a dog and like hallucinating that it was talking to you, or this was just you were just thinking about it? Oh, okay.
No, well, no, that was part of the like it was a hallucination. Like I ended up violently puking after that. Like that was one that kind of scarred me a little bit with weed and what kind of made me have to take a step back. So I was like, if I'm gonna be feeling like that, if something like that could creep up on me when I'd been doing it for a while, like that was just really strange.
Yeah, that's gnarly.
Yeah,
that's
and,
crazy. Yeah,
I'm not even like an anti-weed person. Like I used to love weed, and I still kind of do, but I don't really dabble as much. I just want to like tiptoe back into it. Just kind
So
of like.
since that experience,
Mm,
wow.
yeah, I mean that I tried a few times after, but I get like anxiety and like I don't know. I've wondered about that weird condition that people, it's been popping up in the news lately of like people who use too much like THC at certain points in their lives. They like get those weird like vomiting sort of issues, and it'd make it to where they like weed didn't affect them the same. It was more paranoia inducing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it's just a lot of
even the fact that you were thinking that could possibly have something to do with it just really doesn't
like a mental
set
game.
you up well. Yeah, for sure. You're like, shit, maybe this is it. Maybe that's what I'm feeling. I have that condition.
Yeah, I gotta see if I can like slowly ingratiate myself with weed one of these times again. Like, are we good again?
Definitely shouldn't have a friend be like, dude, you got to smoke weed right now. You got to smoke this weed and float my isolation tank. And we'll hang out. It'll be great.
No, well, this stuff's not weed, man. You can just drink this tea. I got this float tank. You just vibe out.
Yeah, DMT tea.
Oh no! To speak to that comment, I've had no issue with like shrooms, acid, like that. I actually started experimenting more because I was always curious. But like, I had great experiences with acid. Like 2 times I tried it, and shrooms. Like, I vibe perfectly well with it. Does exactly what it's supposed to. But weed, I don't know. It just hit me wrong.
I don't know if it's something that's maybe just an LA thing, but most people that I meet and talk to don't smoke or ingest weed at all, but microdose with mushrooms. It's very common here now, like shockingly, like I said, like more, because that used to be the thing, like right when like weed became legal here, everyone at least like did edibles because it was like people who didn't, it was like you can go to the store or whatever. But yeah, now it's all the microdosing though. It's very common. But yeah, I think I've come across that a lot to where people just they don't like weed, but they like mushrooms. Like it's
I have a friend who microdoses mushrooms every day, but has never taken a normal dose.
See, that seems weird. Like you're not even curious to try like the real thing. I mean, the full experience, I guess. I don't know. Not to peer pressure people, but it seems kind of weird. It's like taking like a little sip of like whiskey, but you never take a shot.
Right. Yeah. My friend has a good term for it. She said it's because there's a microdose and then there's like one step like before you're like, oh, I'm gonna like trip a little bit, but she calls it a museum dose. And I think that's a perfect sort of terminology for like, especially that environment to where you want to be just a little bit above a micro, but just like as if you're going to a museum or something. You want to have like a little enhancement.
Yeah, it's recreational experience.
It's almost like, it's easier to like dip your toe in with psilocybin perhaps than weed. I don't know.
Yeah, I was actually
so many people have had bad experiences.
Yeah, I was really nervous because I'd heard stories of people like having really bad trips, and like that was kind of like my lead up to it. And I was like, I'm just gonna try it, and I ended up like, I don't know, I have like a really symbiotic relationship with mushrooms that I enjoy. But weed, I don't know if I can do the same. Someday.
And then people would always be like, oh, but have you tried edibles? Have you tried sativa? Have you tried this? Have you tried that?
Yeah. You just haven't found the right strain, dude.
Yeah, man.
I've tried all of them, like at some point, so not too worried about it.
Not too worried about it. Yeah. All right, let's dive back.
It sounds great because these are plants, these are funguses. They should be available to everybody. If someone chooses on their own will to take this substance, that should be fine. I have no issue with that. But when there's a corporate control over it, a corporate monopoly, that's an issue. When George Soros is investing hundreds of millions of dollars, when Peter Thiel is investing hundreds of millions of dollars, that should be a red flag for you. You should be aware of this, and you should understand that this is a method of control. This is a method of cultural change, and this is a method of enslavement. That's exactly what we're seeing going on here. So you're not allowed to grow them. Only the corporate masters, only the alphas can grow them. Oh, and this is another one. This might not.
Tree snake is on the branch.
But I want you to listen very carefully here. This is Bruce Damer. We'll get into him in a second. High-level DOD, direct Pentagon connection to Dennis McKenna. Now, it sounds like Joe Rogan does a bump of cocaine right here. I want you to listen for the bag, literally ruffling a bag. I want you to listen for the snort.
Wouldn't be
and I want you to
surprised,
listen
man.
for the drip afterwards. and also in the context of what Bruce is talking about, where people are hiding their drug use, and it should be out in the open and free.
Waiting for her. And so she's getting high on all this sugar, because we still get high on sugar. Here we are drinking our coffees, right, with our sugar. And she's watching.
Drinking our coffees with our sugar, and he does a scooping motion. So, again, where's Rogan getting these drugs from? Is MAP supplying the drugs? Is Onnit supplying the drugs? Is the illegal drug trade and this legal study of drugs, is it all synonymous with each other? I believe it is.
That, and that pattern of scales has evolved to mesmerize.
Now, I'm not saying 100% that's what he did, but that's sure what it sounds like and looks like.
You can hear a bag ruffling.
Anyways, moving back to maps here. The corporate goal. George Soros. Oh, I forgot to mention, maps. Another common theme you're going to see through all this counterculture MK Ultra stuff is heavy involvement with the Soviet Union. Okay? There's a reason for that. If you watch that KGB defector, I can't, his name escapes me right now, Yuri Bezmenov. And he talks about how the KGB wanted to push yoga and these meditation and these Esalen type movements within the country because there's a method of control with that. Okay? So, and it's on record. You can read the documents, how they would push it. They had a hard time. The Soviets had a hard time running operatives via the West Coast, and they found an in with the peace hippie movement. So, again, MAPS working with the Soviets in the 90s, 1994, 92, right on that turning point, working with since 1985. So this is this guy researching ketamine in the former Soviet Union, which is still the Soviet Union. If you don't understand that they faked their breakup, that was all predicted by the defectors, like Anatoly Golitsyn. That's exactly what's going on. I would research that. But he was researching ketamine. And if you go through here, it seems as though he was more interested in the subconscious mind than anything, what the effects and how to influence the subconscious mind. That seems to be his main focus here when working with ketamine on people. And they got contracts with military hospitals, like veterans hospitals. So where was MAPS born? Where did the idea come from? Well, Mr. Doblin shares a fascinating story about how the idea for MAPS got started at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California. So again, think of it in terms of the Bohemian Grove of the 21st century, where you're having studies going on people, but you're also having these high-level Silicon Valley and people from every institution going there and scheming up new ideas and new movements and new agendas via the Esalen Institute. So, who goes to the Esalen Institute?
Esalen, where you just were on the Big Sur coast, and they stored them at their in town.
Did you see what happened to Big Sur?
What? Unfortunately, those are out of state. I'm not sure why, but Joe Rogan goes to the Esalen Institute. He's talking to Bruce Damer there. And if you haven't watched that interview with Bruce Damer, please watch that, at least the first 20 minutes of it or so. It's very telling. So we're going to transition on into the Esalen Institute here. So, the Esalen Institute. Again, like I said,
weaponized yoga.
Who visits the Esalen Institute? Who came out of the Esalen Institute? How much influence did the Esalen Institute have on the culture and shaping our society and the collapsing society of this country of the West? Well, here's some famous assets, cultural change agents coming out of the Esalen Institute. Alan Watts, Aldous Huxley, who inspired the creation of Esalen. Terence McKenna, Joe's boy, Terence McKenna. Timothy Leary, Richard Alpert, Rick Doblin, Straussman, Robert Anton Wilson. Okay? All these assets coming from the Esalen Institute. Having their Soviet handlers at the Esalen Institute dictate to them what they talk about. Most of the agendas on Rogan's podcast are coming from the Esalen Institute. They're originally ideas stemming from the Esalen Institute, like I stated earlier with the universal basic income, first created at the Esalen Institute, promoted via Alan Watts, now promoted via Joe Rogan's podcast, and we're seeing us pushed in that direction. So, the Esalen Institute. In 1962, Michael Murphy and Dick Pierce famously founded the Esalen Institute. Less well known is the fact that they founded this institute based on advice coming from an older generation of mentors, such as Aldous Huxley, the guy who wrote the Brave New World Blueprint. Him and his brother Julian Huxley. Julian Huxley promoted the idea of chaos via political, economic, etc. landscape for a brave new world to rise out of it, a centrist movement. I'm paraphrasing here. Actually, let me pull that up because this is important. His brother, and in the exact same agendas. And Brave New World is a blueprint. So Julian Huxley, the end of evolution, a new categorical imperative. Purpose. This is coming from his agenda, Julian Huxley's agenda, Aldous' brother. Purposely create tension across the political, social, economic, etc. planes via liberalism, communism, and fascism. Now you can look at Trump as fascist. That's what he's portrayed as. So a collective new humanity will emerge. A collective new humanity will emerge. Now remember this clip? A collective new humanity will emerge. All this stems back to
Yeah, I'm hoping that having him in office is that the whole thing was such a clusterfuck and that so many people are so disturbed that it's going to make people more politically active and more aware of the consequences of having someone like that in office.
Yeah, and actually, weirdly, unifying.
Yeah.
Because
weirdly unifying. Okay, interesting. Mentors such as Aldous Huxley, Alan Watts, Joseph Campbell.
Pause really quick. So this is funny because this is I'm pretty sure pre-Texas Joe Rogan when he was very, very anti-Trump, but later because he's a very wishy-washy motherfucker, he becomes very pro-Trump. But I just thought that was funny, just seeing clips of him being like talking like, oh yeah, he's
they're all conservatives now.
Yeah, they're all conservatives now. The new comedy movement that's gone over there, the new mainstream.
Yeah, the old Trump and Alex Jones and Joe Rogan like love triangle that was going on for a while there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that was a crazy time for politics.
I think what was it? They were watching Oh, they were watching, like, was it the election or whatever? And they were looking, or like there's some poll or something. I don't know. I'm so out of the loop with politics, but this was a while ago. But it was on JRE, and then it was Texas went red, and Joe's all or like went pro Trump. He's all, I mean, yeah, I don't really care. Oh, he had Tim Dillon on, and Tim Dillon's like,
Tim Dillon called him
yeah,
out.
sure, Joe, you really seem like you didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah, they were all thrilled. I remember that was when I was starting to get more interested in like what was going on with politics, because like Trump was, he was an interesting person to watch for sure. Like when he came onto the scene and like, all of just the crazy polarization of politics. I was like, well, I guess you can't help but watch that. And then like Alex Jones getting involved and Joe Rogan, and I swear at one point they were talking about trying to get Trump on the podcast or something like that at some point.
Yeah.
That was a wild time.
Like
I was
Joe used to be straight lib, like hardcore when he was in LA here.
Mm.
But he flip-flops depending on whoever is on his show and whoever obviously is controlling him, whoever his puppet masters are.
Yeah.
Now, Campo, if you are unaware of these people, which is understandable because this research is suppressed, they've kept Jan Irvin, who really dug all this stuff out and droned through documents and things to make this information available. This is a huge agenda that they don't want in the public domain. Go look at Jan Irvin's Logos Media. Go check out Logos Media. Read his articles over there, and please dive into his brain database. He has all the connections there. It is beautifully done. All the footnotes. You can spend months in the thing. This is an important agenda that is unfolding before us right now, with history going into the past and then continuing into the future. All these people are covered by Jan Irvin, with Lawrence Rockefeller being another major supporter of Campbell. Lawrence Rockefeller was also an important behind-the-scenes advisor to Michael Murphy since the founding stages of Esalen, and donated millions of dollars to the Institute. Again, the Rockefellers are always there. Is that why Joe thinks it's ridiculous? Are the Rockefellers ridiculous? The Rothschild agents, the Rockefellers, are they ridiculous? I don't think so. The Packard Foundation, Ford Foundation, Carnegie Foundation, all had some involvement with the Esalen Institute in the early 60s and early 70s, which otherwise appears to have been reasonably profitable on its own. It would be clear what forces were behind the founding Esalen Institute. It should be clear what forces were behind the founding of the Esalen Institute, an institute we will get back to in a later chapter. Okay? These are all, it's all footnoted. Those are all the references. Again, Esalen Institute. The sensitivity training and, quote, sexual encounter programs of the most radical California groups, such as Esalen Institute and its many imitators, were all developed and implemented by Tavistock Institute psychologists. Tavistock involved. Esalen Institute is Tavistock involved. Again, this is a hard book to find, and it's basically one of their only published ones on them doing studies and documenting those studies that you can find. It's pretty lukewarm as far as what they're doing here, but it's thought architecture. It's all about how to dictate the subconscious. Now, anybody can go to Esalen Institute if you pay, but you're going to be experimented on, and you're going to be an experiment essentially for future programs and future operations. Okay, so I want to read this article just so people have a better understanding of what the Esalen Institute was used for and how much the Soviet Union was involved in the Esalen Institute. I want to hopefully pull up. Okay, let me show you this real quick. This is from I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on it. This is a book by Oh, an end to ordinary history is what it is, and it's all about the the men who stare at goats type operations, which I'm going to get into later, which is involved with all this stuff, but it's really a smokescreen. It's about those operations, the CIA and the KGB, and their interest in it. Okay, so it was written by Dick Pierce, one of the founding members of Esalen, and it's heavily influenced by Esalen. It's supposedly based on truth. So this is in the beginning of the book. My thanks to Jim Hickman, whose understanding and love of the Soviet Union had informed all of us to work on this book. The Soviet Union was so heavily involved in Esalen, it makes your head spin. Okay, so this is a really good article to refer to, how a famed New Age retreat center helped end the Cold War. As far as understanding of the Soviet influence over Esalen and how much they really dictated that. I'm not going to read the whole article right now for this video. I'm going to do another video where I actually go through it because it's a long article. But I'm going to read some of the key points. Again, just so you have an understanding, the Soviet Union promoted its foreign policy through the World Peace Council and other front organizations. So the Soviets had a hard time running operations via the West Coast, and they found an in with the hippie movement, the drug culture, the hippie culture. This is a good way to infiltrate and subvert the West from within. That's exactly what they were trying to do, and what they're still trying to do, because the Soviet Union still exists to this day. You all should understand that. It was a synthetic breakup. The defectors predicted it. Anatoly Glitzin predicted it to a T. So I'll just briefly mention some of the stuff this article talks about. People from Esalen were allowed to go over to the Soviet Union and literally hand out literature. Okay? No issue. Americans in the Soviet Union just handing out literature. Red flag. They were doing things like helping Soviet engineers, giving Soviet engineers information on how to redirect rivers and stuff like that. Like literal treason was going on via the Esalen Institute, and they would bring KGB people in, and there was a lot of compromising going on there, because this is what goes on there. A bunch of naked people in the hot springs, a lot of stuff goes on at the Esalen Institute. So it's a great place to compromise people. And that's a lot of what's going on there, similar to Bohemian Grove. So there's a lot of KGB agents there. That's all listed and documented. Again, a lot of the Esalen people, a big cover is the whole expanding your consciousness, telekinesis, psychic warfare. These are covers. These are smoke screens. And that's what they were using for their smoke screen to run these operations. And there's a lot in this article. Like I said, I'm going to do a separate video on it and just go through the whole article. Astronauts were interacting there, with KGB people. They would bring the scientists in. Let me get down to Boris Yeltsin here. So Yeltsin came to America. This is before he was selected to be president. Came to America via the Esalen Institute, and they brought him around. They showed him around America. And after he came to America via the Esalen Institute, he was instated as the president. Okay? Esalen and Tavistock working together. This is track 2 diplomacy. People involved, that's where that term comes from, Esalen, track 2 diplomacy. The idea was to forge new lines of communication between Cold War powers by bringing some of the USSR's leading scientists and spiritualists to Esalen Institute to mix with their counterparts in the United States. Maybe we all have common goals. Sounds pretty treasonous to me. Sounds like they were setting up for a brave new world. It sounds like the Soviets had a lot of influence over our people, and they were trading information back and forth. That's how some of the folks from Stanford Research Institute in Silicon Valley, who would one day be responsible for funding and building the biggest technologies firms, met up with the Russian cosmonists. Now, this is all via Esalen Institute. They set up a series of events at Esalen's Big Sur campus. So you're having these these Silicon Valley people meet up with these Russian scientists. Meeting up with these Russian cosmonists, scientists, okay? So again, why do we see all these Soviet Jews running the high technology? I mean, if you, some of you are hopefully aware of like the Talpiot guys and their research. I think most of it's pretty much off the internet at this point, unfortunately. But the whole Talpiot program and what you see going on in Israel is all these Soviet Jews dictating Israel, because that's what Israel is. It's a backdoor into the West. So again, a lot of it's happening via the Esalen Institute. Okay, so these cosmonists, these Russian cosmonists who were communists at the time, the cosmonists went the furthest into its visions of transformation, calling for the end of death and the resurrection of the dead, and a free movement in cosmic space. Now, these are key narratives originating from Soviets, okay? Cosmonists influenced Soviet politics and technology. The cosmonists told Americans, LSD-taking spiritualists, that technology could give them a way to beat death. So these are the agendas originating out of Esalen. So I think you're starting to understand what's going on here.
Transhumanism.
We're not being beaten by machines, but by a league of tech billionaires who have been taught to believe that humans are the problem and technology is the solution. We must become aware of their agenda and fight it if we're going to survive.
Humans are inherently evil. We need tech to control them.
I want to play this clip here.
It's all the subtle messaging.
There's some interesting stuff going on here.
Rudolph II, supported. He funded these alchemists. And the initial project.
Now, this is Bruce Damer speaking here. High-level DOD, like I said, friends with Joe Rogan, good friends with Dennis McKenna to the point where they smoke DMT together. And Bruce gets ideas for
the evil puppet
science.
Do you know Duncan Trussell, this guy whose picture is up?
Yeah, I've seen him on Kill Tony. I'm not super familiar with him, but I remember he had that little puppet that was on that one episode.
Yeah, that's right. God, I can't remember the name. But I used to listen to his podcast. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Little hobo?
Yeah, Little Hobo, that's what it was.
Right? Yeah, Little Hobo.
It's a little satanic puppet thing that he had. That was crazy.
Yeah. So he's super into the occult. He's had some interesting characters on his podcast in the past. He's had some I don't know. I maybe I'll review some of his shows. I'll have to dig back. I think this is from I want to say 2016, 2015. But yeah, he's an interesting character. But yeah, that's funny you saw him on that Kill Tony episode.
Yeah.
That's kind of
that was my first impression of him.
Yeah.
Via the DMT. He works with NASA. He works with these think tanks. Actually, well, I'll play that in a minute.
Project was not to turn lead into gold, but to animate. Rudolph II, supported. He funded these alchemists. And the initial project was not to turn lead into gold, but to animate matter from dead to alive.
Yeah.
And that's been a passion of mine for a long time, but it was
a passion of yours has been to bring the dead back to life.
Or to
so goes on
to bring the dead back to life. What did this clip say? What were the Soviet cosmonists interested in?
Homunculi.
Where did that go?
I get it. Sometimes you have so many tabs.
Where did that go?
You lose your work.
Oh, vision went furthest into visions of transformation calling for the end of death and the resurrection of the dead, and free movement in cosmic space. Where do we see these agendas pushed constantly? We see these agendas pushed constantly on Alex Jones, and we see these agendas pushed constantly through the intellectual dark web and Joe Rogan. Okay, so are we starting to see where their agenda is originating out of? Let's get back to this clip here.
On the cycle forever, but we're far from the big win. But we're getting into the territory where if we could completely turn this around, we're going to the next level. Life extension, everything. It's really amazing. Sitting here on this planet with this incredible potential of space colonies and life extension and unlimited cloning.
Something like a soul or energy or consciousness or something like
Yes,
that. Yeah.
yes, a form, like an Aquinas form, right? But yes, I think that those are actually two different things in Judaism as well. Like the idea of Tichiyat HaMetim, which is the idea of resurrection of the dead. That's a different idea than what happens after you die, right? Tichiyat HaMetim is the idea that eventually the Messiah comes, that we'll all be resurrected back in our physical bodies at a certain point, which, you know, honestly, given the nature of how science is moving and the possibilities of cloning, is actually less crazy than it sounded probably a couple of thousand years ago.
Yeah.
I was born on Earth. I was the richest man on several planets by the age of 74. The first time.
Now, this is from a show which I believe is predictive programming, and it's all about transferring your consciousness into clones, which I think is the actual agenda. I think the whole concept, which is pushed by Esalen, is the idea that uploading your consciousness into this Hive computer is not the actual agenda. I think that is a false agenda, like what Elon Musk promotes. The real agenda is using clones and other things like that. And Bruce Damer also agrees with me. He'll speak the real agenda. That's what he does best. He talks openly about these things. And so, again, I think this is really what's going on.
When I died, I was 99. New technology transferred my consciousness to a new body. For 263 years, I sleeved into new bodies, living on in perfect health.
A vault for your every memory, your every secret, immune to aging and disease. The body will decay, but your memories live on in someone else's body, your new slave. This is the great step. It makes death itself only a memory.
Sunday at the National Space Society's annual event. I'm talking about China's new Silk Road.
This is key here as well. I'm going to skip over this for now because that's going to be the next thing I mention here.
It's economy.
Do you watch Black Mirror, Braxton?
Yeah, I watched that a while back.
Did you see the one where it was the two chicks and that was the whole premise, was that they're uploading their consciousness and living in this virtual world, and then after you die, you.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you saw that.
Like they're like paradise. Yeah, I watched that one.
It was like a virtual retirement home, but you live in you can live like in your young body.
Yeah,
I like the one where they were like the military guys were taking the implant that made them see the people as monsters.
Yeah, like crazy bug creatures or whatever.
Yeah, and then they flash him, and it like makes him see the truth, and like he just sees people as normal, and he's like, "What the hell?"
He's sees the soldiers killing these like innocent people, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Like, "What do you mean?" Oh, I think they called them like roaches or something. Like, "What? These aren't people. These are roaches." Yeah. That was a good one.
That was a really good one.
Yeah, it's crazy because like it's funny because there is like a side to that. Like I always try to look at it from like the psychological point of view too, where like it's, you know, maybe the stories are kind of an allegory, because you think about it, like there's that whole thing of like the 8 stages of genocide, and like one of them is like dehumanizing, where you're like basically saying that people are like roaches or rats, or like they're just like pests pretty much, and you slowly start to build this narrative that like these are like evil people that we can do without. It's like that's that same kind of
Rogan,
deal.
Remember during his early his early stand-up, he was the first guy who was like, oh, we're just bacteria on the earth, we're humans are scum, we're just ruining this, it's like this whole negative thing that is like,
that was kind of the idea that like that whole frame of mind where people are looked at as like pests on the earth, and we're just like, the invasive species that just goes around destroying everything. Like that's always kind of been a theme that like sticks with me, where like there was a point where I kind of was siding with that for a while, and then the more I started looking at like spirituality and like how people's potential to be better as individuals in society, the more you start to look into that, the more you start to realize like, no, we could be beneficial. It's just the state that we're in right now.
Exactly.
Like there's always that competing like ideology of like we're either a scourge or we're like ultimately beneficial if we do what's right.
Yeah.
But then too, it's like the whole, our bodies are junk because people are fed like the worst diet possible through their entire lives. So of course you're going to want to go and upload your body into like the cloud.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Plan for it. Take pharmaceuticals until the time you die. So to cover up the symptoms of having a terrible diet and all the terrible, things that society promotes us to do to our bodies. And then don't worry, because then it's almost like, that's a stand-in. Again, to say all technology is evil, I wouldn't say that, but it's sort of like technology is a stand-in for religion now. So where you are dealing with matters of the afterlife and perhaps the soul and or at least consciousness existing. But even if it's, even if it's all fake, like we don't have any, even if the government doesn't secretly have some tech to where they can upload, it's just the fantasy of it is almost like enough of a stand-in for that, like let's say like religion for people to have. And then again, that's like another cul-de-sac before the gold mine, perhaps, where it's just like, okay, you just get caught up rather than actually thinking about something, like how to fix things here and now. You're stuck in the world of fantasy of, oh, we can think about how we can upload our consciousness after we die. Like
it's always those quick fix solutions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what was that do you guys see that movie? It was from a while back, but it was that one where like everybody gets pulled into like they'll be at like their dreary little apartments and they're just like uploading their consciousness into like it's been a while since I saw it, but they pretty much like left their bodies to go in this little digital world, and like Matrix? At the end, like they all get shut off. It's kind of similar, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was some movie.
It was a movie.
No, I think I saw it. It was just about how like in the future people could just like give up, just not be in reality anymore and just be like in the internet land, fully immersed, with like IVs feeding them and like, like just yikes. That's like, technology run amok, obviously.
It's like there is a balance with technology where we shouldn't be complete Luddites, like cavemen, just get rid of it all. But the direction people are trying to take us in is not good, though.
Yeah. I see it kind of being similar with like modern medicine. It's like you don't want to, like big pharma is bad, but you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like modern medicine for like emergency situations, let's say. It's like we have a lot of life-saving measures, but it's like, discernment again.
Yeah.
What do you,
the middle path.
It
always seems to go that way. Because there's the extremes. You can get caught up in polarity, or you can take yourself out of those extremes and go for that middle.
Well, it's like the whole like internet mentality right now that we deal with a lot. That's just like, oh, any studies backed by the government and corrupt, just like any, it's like these people that just don't believe anything, or they claim they don't believe anything. Everything's black and white.
Yeah, and that's a theme that that's kind of a universal theme, because Dr. Greger talks about that. There's a lot of truth to that, where they flood people with so much bad information, so much conflicting information about diet, that it makes people just throw their hands up and just give up. And so they'll just take whatever pill or whatever fad diet. But it's like the same thing with with like studies too. It's like, and I even extend that to like conspiracies, because there are like the good conspiracies where there's actually some truth and you're going to like find something that, you know, you should know. Or there's the stuff that's kind of just a distraction, like a psyop, where they're just trying to compete for your attention. So, you know, you end up going down a rabbit hole. It's going to get you nowhere. And some people, they waste like 5 or more years just like on this one thing.
That's got to be a goal, I would imagine. Okay, if there are psyops in the, as far as like just to make conspiracy people with, you know, really inquisitive, amazing minds that can study things, get them caught up in just
Dead
BS,
end rabbit holes.
yeah, dead end, you know, conspiracies.
That's why the Tartarian thing's so big. It's dead end.
Yeah, because you don't know, like you can't confirm any of it, and like the historical documents, like you might come across something that will like at least give you just that little bit of hope that there might be something there, but it's like just a little dopamine hit that's like pulling you in further.
Yeah.
That's like the sovereign stuff. It's like, I want that to be true because that would be awesome. There is probably some truth to it, but some of the stuff that people get caught up in where it's like debt discharge and like negotiable instruments, you have to have like an accounting background. You have to understand banking terminology. You have to dedicate a lot of time just to be able to even start to understand that stuff.
It's you know, it's the same thing as like the, you know, these people all thinking there's trannies dancing in every school room in the United States. You know, it's just this.
Yeah.
It's this. Oh, get people that. And like the people that are really into that idea, they spend a lot of fucking time on it, man. Like they're talking about it all the time. And it's just like, is this really, you know, is this something
or is it worth spending, you know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, that gets you into the MAGA QAnon side of things too, where it's like people buy into that. Like there's this dude that was on like 4chan or something, and he was like giving us all instructions and saying that like Trump is gonna show us the way and all this stuff, and it's like they got so pulled
Trust
into
that
it.
guy.
Yeah, like this guy's the second coming is pretty much like the, you know, there's literally people comparing him to Jesus. They were doing that with Fauci too during COVID. You know, there's all these different cults competing to like distract people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It
playing
is
with
crazy.
the psychology of people because it's such a like comfort for humans to have someone to like go to who has all the answers, right? Like it's almost like it like taps
religion.
into our like mommy and daddy issues, and that's how they like get people.
Yeah. Yeah, because you want that like infallible person to be able to go to for knowledge. And a lot of people, when they do start to kind of, you know, come into adulthood, like they mature more mentally, they start to separate from their parents as being the like Alan Watts. He actually put me onto that idea when I was first starting to look more into psychology. The whole thing that like at a certain point you realize your parents are not infallible. They make mistakes just like everybody else. And then that's when people start to rebel. And then it's like, okay, well, now you just dropped that one. Kind of like what Nicholas talks about with the nets of Belial. It's like you dropped that net of support where that's your only source of information. And now it's the news, or now it's like some person on the internet. It's like you're always getting caught up in something until you, you know, disconnect and do the research for yourself.
Yeah.
It makes me think of, it ties in like Edward Bernays. I mean, all these, that's just like, you know, the people we know about, but like there's so much work done, and this is just on the record as far as like how people's brains can be tricked, and how like it's funny to me like how easy it is. Like that's like it's been done on such a massive scale. Thinking on like a smaller scale, like okay, conspiracy theorists, like it's so easy for them to throw people off, like to throw inquiring minds off and get them stuck.
Yeah.
Like it's I don't know.
Well, yeah, because that's like Operation Mockingbird, where the whole term conspiracy theorist even came from in the first place.
Right.
It's like that was used as a way to say like, okay, well, they're onto something that's kind of dangerous because that could completely sway the direction of everything. Yeah, it's what do they call that? Like plausible deniability, pretty much. Like we're not up to anything bad. We're just gonna like throw you off our trail pretty much.
Yes, yeah. What do you think of Joe Rogan pushing the concept of singularity and how it is tied in with transhumanism? I mean, he's always had that sort of take, right? I mean, as far as like talking about the singularity, I mean, that kind of goes back to like old Joe Rogan. Oh man, like I mean, they showed clips earlier in this video. One day, what if we can upload, like we were just talking about the Black Mirror shit?
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like that Gaia concept too, where like the world is like, you know, like Mother Earth. It's supposed to be like people's god in certain religions, which there is some interesting kind of, you know, truth or good reason to that. At least puts you in like a, you know, conscious state where you're not destroying the earth and you're trying to actually do what's right for nature. But yeah, it's that same kind of thing.
Hijacked though.
Yeah, it leads to like a cult-like mentality where like everybody has to have that hive mind. Everybody thinks the same, or else, you know, like thought crimes. You can't be guilty of wrong thinking, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Collectivism over individualism, greater good, what's the best for the group versus, you know, like it's a slippery slope. And I think a lot of what Joe Rogan talks about is like that too. Like where, okay, we talk about like the plant medicines and talking about like lessons learned and, you know, wisdom gained from all of this exploration. And again, yeah, he'll tie it in with transhumanism. It's a complete manipulation of truth, perhaps. Again, he could be talking about like referencing a lot of different like religious concepts. I know he's had some good guests on. He's spit some fire before, but there's always an agenda co-opted behind it. Yeah, it always gets co-opted. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I've been listening to the Joe Rogan Experience for years, since it first came on when it was just him and Red Band back in the day. And it's like, I used to be, you know, an avid listener. Like he used to have, there's truth tied into all of this. It's just, it's tied in with BS, or there's shadiness behind it, obviously, as we can see, at least with the sponsors of his show.
Yeah, for sure.
And the nationality and religions of the guests he has on his show. Have you seen Leather Apron Club?
Leather Apron Club.
Shout out to Leather Apron Club.
Yeah, that dude's a beast
on YouTube.
But he crunched all the numbers on all the guests that Joe's ever had on, and it's been like 90% like Israeli citizens. Like a shocking number, even though they account for only 2% of the population. He's had like an overwhelming landslide majority Jewish guests on the show.
Yeah.
Lex Friedman. Like, and it's like, why is that happening?
Yeah, in which it's not, you know, whatever, but it's interesting to ask the questions and make the observations and look at the connections and see how they tie in. Like,
those kind of things are worth looking into, because I mean that's how you get like that's I've always kind of like innately liked to like tie together different ideas, how different things are related. And like it wasn't even until like recently that I started seeing just how deep all this stuff goes with like the Esalen Institute, the Israeli like tie-ins and all that stuff. Like I didn't realize how much of a network there was actually like at work. And like seeing some of these, like this video that we're watching and a couple others, it's like the ties go really deep and it's all over the intellectual world. It's like all these like major figures of just like atheism, transhumanism, all this stuff. It all goes
like
back
pseudo intellectual.
Yeah, because
they're fooling all these dudes into thinking they're smart by repeating the things they say, you know.
Yeah. So it's the same talking points always repeated, and it's coming from like an approved source pretty much. Like that's why there was no good there were no good debates to be had like when the whole COVID like treatment thing was going on. Like nobody wanted to have a discussion on that because the science was settled. It's kind of the same thing with, there's a lot of narratives like that.
Yeah.
It makes me think of the picture that he showed earlier of like Joe Rogan, Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson. They're all sitting at like the dinner table. It's like that creepy picture, but it's like, that's it. Like that's literally, that's the new mainstream, so to speak. But yeah. Like these are like the people who have like the approved, certified, like good opinions. And those are the people like are controlling like the culture now. Like it's an interesting shift, but yeah, that picture.
Yeah. Like that Jordan Peterson and Joseph Campbell thing I noticed earlier, like when he was, showing that whole, the different names involved, like Huxley and all them. It's like Jordan Peterson seems like he's like the new stand-in for, the founding like psychologists, like Nietzsche and Jung, all those kind of people. Because Joseph Campbell, he talks about that whole. I mean, I've seen some of his stuff. That's found out he has videos on Mark Passio's hard drive, the ARC drive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he talks about the whole idea of the hero's journey and all that. Jordan Peterson talks about that a lot too. So it's almost like he's that spiritual psychologist that's keeping people kind of connected to some sort of religious, religious connection. With like the contrast of like atheism and transhumanism, like it's almost like they're using that to keep people, I don't know, I guess just tied in. So they're not fighting each other. You have that like cohesion, I guess.
Yeah. Suppress. Yeah. Questioning the status quo, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you get enough pep talks from Jordan Peterson telling you what the meaning of life is, then you're not going to feel like a doomer, like you're black-pilled. So you're going to be able to walk into it because his buddies, they have these solutions coming out, like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's such a rabbit hole.
I'm going to have to tie together some connections after this one. Like, I don't know, it's a good catalyst for looking into more, like doing deeper research on all these topics.
Yeah, and we've come across some good videos. Like, I mean, you were just mentioning it. I got reminded of a Jordan Peterson one that we were watching.
I was just thinking that.
And I was thinking maybe we should watch it, but I'm hesitant to play it just because, like, the person who made the video, like, definitely has some good points and revealed some very interesting things about Jordan Peterson and his views and then what he's done in the past and what he said and compile it all together. I can tell sort of the political view of the person who made the video, and I don't necessarily agree with it. Therefore, it's like not necessarily a video I want to like super promote, but it's very interesting, and I think you are discerning enough to be able to. Maybe I'll post it somewhere, but yeah, I'll send you the link though. Name? God, I can't remember. I have to look at my YouTube history because I can't remember. But that and what else?
Actually, someone we found through Mike David.
Oh yeah,
through Red Bar.
Right. And then Leather Apron Club, that was the other one, another good YouTube channel.
Really good.
Really smart guy who does a lot of research.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. It's pretty late, and we didn't make it through this video, but definitely there's more. Yeah, maybe we'll pick it up next time. Again, it's posted on Jeffrey's YouTube channel, Jeffrey Phillips on YouTube, if you want to watch the whole thing. But yeah, thanks for hanging out.
Oh yeah, a lot of good conversation points.
Hell yeah.
We made this one even more dense than it was originally.
Porcelain.
Yeah, right.
Porcelain spelled Porsalin.
Okay.
Is the guy who did the documentary. He's done a bunch of
Jordan Peterson one?
Yeah, like deep dives on strange, but he's basically like oh no, sorry, that's not it. It wasn't a porcelain documentary. Resurrection Europa. Yeah, that's the name of the dude who fucking yeah. See, he's got a lot of like weird nationalist views, but he points out that Jordan Peterson is like held up by the right, but he's kind of, if you follow what he's been saying, he's kind of trying to destroy the right.
He's a hardcore leftist, actually.
Yeah, he's like a super lefty.
and that's just like textbook, like based off of what he said, but it's very interesting.
And somehow he's got, he's been held up by conservatives and he's like making money. So he's like, whatever, I'll keep my mouth shut about that shit. But he's, like some of the things that this guy had a problem with him, I was like, I don't really have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But then some other things was like, oh, wow, that is pretty interesting. But he is a weird nationalist guy. And I don't really, like you said, we don't
want to promote his channel necessarily.
nationalists on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I was on Will Keller's show a while back, when I was like had that little comment war with him, somebody was talking about this one documentary, and he said that like it really helped open his eyes to things, and like I was like, oh, cool, I'll have to check that out. I looked it up. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I want to like. I mean, I'd be curious to watch it. It was that same, like Europa style, nationalistic kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I get where you're coming from. I don't know if I want to go that extreme.
Like, but some good points though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool to be like, it's okay to be like proud about things your parents done in the past, but you can't like use that to control borders and shit like that,
Yeah, well,
so like,
and that was like
a lot of this guy's complaint with Jordan Peterson was Jordan kind of jumping down people's throats for being nationalistic and being like so proud of the founding fathers and it's shit. And Jordan's opinion is, well, you didn't do that. Why are you so, why do you feel like you have some sort of, claim to something because something your great grandparents did, which I kind of understand. But those nationalistic people really like, they're like, oh, our past, our history is so important, our culture and all this shit. And it's like, what culture? This bullshit culture that they lied to you about?
To me, it just sounds like an appeal to tradition fallacy. And it's like, we all know, like, okay, we need to uphold ourselves to better standards than that.
Yeah.
But anyway, later, dude. We're going to get out of here.
Yeah. I'm going to be doing
who's Coach Carbohydrate?
Oh, yeah. That's a funny comment. I think he's referencing Jordan Peterson. Nah, he's just undercarb and dehydrated, causing him to be angry and dumb. And thus just interested in dumbass distracting stuff. Hyperhydrate yourself and see beyond.
That's why he's crying all the time. He needs
you're not
carbs.
Wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong with that one. For sure.
Tapped his brain of all the serotonin.
Yeah, man. Stress out your adrenals. But I'm going to be going over some books next week. We'll dive back into this. But yeah, back again next Saturday. Podcast weekend. Cool. All right. Good night. Peace. Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Have a good night.
Bye. You too. End stream.